青い水平線を今駆け抜けてく研ぎ澄まされた時の流れ感じてよときめきへと動き出す世界は忘れかけてた遠い夢の訪れ Right on time さまよう想いなら優しく受け止めてそっと包んで Alright on time 心に火をつけて溢れる喜びに広がれ Right on time 僕の輝く未来さあ回る初めてうつろな日々もすべて愛に溶け込むなんという朝今すぐ君のもと届けに行こう燃える心迷わず Right on time 時走り出せ愛を光り出せ目もくらむほど Alright on time 心に火をつけて飛び立つ魂に送るよ Right on time届けに行こう燃える心今こそ Alright on time 時走り出せ愛を光り出せ目もくらむほど Alright on time 心に火をつけて飛び立つ魂に送るよ Right on time Oh alright on time さまよう想いなら優しく
Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and MBs, and welcome to Warui Deshou's Deshou the Third stream. We're starting off again in a new show, well, an older show, but we're bringing it back around for another go. Not quite the last tour of this show, as it turns out. Ho, ho, ho. Getting the bad jokes out of the way already, as is my want and need. I'm Shadon, and joining me, of course, from across the pond, but close by, is the Soul Doctor.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I hope y'all are all doing as safe and well as possible. Hi, Shadon. Question for you that was posed by this TV show. And I think it remains a relevant question even now, nigh on 4 years after it's come out. And that is, can you eat a god?
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
that's okay. Chi disagrees, but so there's debate about this. I love it. The discourse on the edible nature of gods, and also what is cheese? All kinds of existentially loaded questions in this anime. No, look, I'm so happy. I'm excited. Get going with the intro. Let's get into it, baby.
Oh, I will. I mean, I'll just add to that. Like, I think it depends also on the god. Like, if it was Dionysus, for example, he'd totally be up for being eaten.
That's a fair play. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, am I wrong? Am I wrong? But anyway, we're not here to talk about Greek gods, not today anyway, nor Roman gods or gods of any sort that you might be familiar with. We're just instead talking about two young girls traveling a post-apocalyptic wasteland. You know, it's Fallout but Moe, basically. Or maybe it isn't.
It felt to me like my sort of touch point with it was it felt like two characters from Hidamari's sketch fell into a world created by Mamoru Oshii, and especially in episode 1 with the dark dank cave and the machines and everything. Yeah, it has a little bit of a Kino's vibe to it at times, but yeah, no, this is okay. Never mind. I won't get too much into it because you still have things to say.
I was gonna say it's gonna be a Mad Moe Deshou Road.
That's right. You're right.
There you go. There you go. But no, we're actually talking about Girls Last Tour, a show that's been on our Patreon suggestions for Deshou the Third for quite a while, and it's finally had its time to shine. Something that I've actually watched, not in full, but I remember catching at least one of the episodes on the anime samples we do in our Discord. And I remember thinking, this is intriguing. This makes me stroke my beard in appreciation. So, we'll get around to it eventually. And here we are. We've got to be talking about the first 4 episodes today. Got a lot to discuss, got a lot of patron questions in. Because this, again, just to remind you, if you're catching us on the free, this is our Deshou the Third format. This is our $5 premium patron-only podcast until it goes free to air. If you're catching it on the free, and you might not have heard us do this particular format before, we don't go into long plot summaries. We just provide context as and when it's appropriate for the talking points that we bring up. We'll also get a little bit into creatives as well, I believe. And I think what would be reasonable for us to do is because this show, like, I think from in fact all shows really, like, it's probably best we just give a quick summary of how we feel before we even start talking about it to avoid spoilers. I'm gonna say I think this show is really, really, really boring. Is what I would be saying if I took it completely on the surface. If you want to come into this show expecting it to be, I mentioned Fallout, for example. I know comparisons have also been made between this and Nier Automata, but the thing that Nier Automata and Fallout have the Girls Last Tour does not, in part because they are video games, is action. You know, there's a lot of, things going on. There's, like, a lot of combat. There's a lot of intense stuff. And whereas this is more of a, particle effects, subsurface scattering, all that thing.
Poor
3D
questing
models.
systems.
Oh God, don't even get me started. But I think it's also just, worth bringing up that. God, let's try a thought there. I think it's also worth bringing up that, like, if you go into the show expecting like it to be a kind of really intense post-apocalyptic story, you're going to be disappointed. You've got to take it on. You've got to take the show on its own merits and with what it's trying to do. Getting out there early.
That's why I
think
mentioned.
that's very key.
Sorry, it is key. You're right. That's sort of why I mentioned the Oshii feel, because a lot of the stuff he does, the stuff that's not as well known, like Angel's Egg, but also like things like Ghost in the Shell and Pat Labor 2, especially Pat Labor 2, just are like they feel not the same exactly, but similar-ish when it comes to the mood and the pacing. I think this is like very much unlike a lot of modern television anime in that how slow it is willing to make the burn and how just lingering the shots are and how much time there is spent in silence and things like that, and just how much importance it places on atmosphere over like things happening,
Yeah, I agree. What the funny thing is, like, without getting into it right now, what this show also reminded me of, and I wasn't expecting this, was an Arthur C. Clarke book I once read called Rendezvous with Rama. What is Rendezvous with Rama, you might wonder? Well, what basically could be a giant interspace vibrator, spaceship turns up. It's just a long tube, basically, turns up. And of course, we've got to send a bunch of astronauts in there to go take a look. But this is Rama and not the Nostromo from Aliens. So rather than, of course, there being horrible shit inside that murders them all and, does horrible things to him. The mood of Clark's work is more, we're going to explore like this desolate, like abandoned environment, and soak in the atmosphere. And that to me feels a lot like what happens in Girls Last Tour, even though that of course is a science fiction story, and this is not. But
It might be.
we
I think it might
we
be.
can quibble about, but I don't think it really. I don't think it really matters as such, but I think the core mood between the two, and I thought, wow, it's making me remember an Arthur C. Clarke work.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. That's certainly not what I expected, but that's what popped into my head. So yeah, I would overall definitely though recommend Girls Last Tour if you want my the top thing feeling on it. I think it's really intriguing so far, really interesting. I have also been told on good authority it only actually ramps up from here.
Oh my god! Wow.
Yes. I think one of our patrons, Yukinon, who's been a big proponent and advocate of this show, shout out to you, Yuki, in the chat, has mentioned that episode 5 is the make or break one, which is just at the point we've missed. So
listen,
come back next time.
It's
ladies,
already
gentlemen, MBs.
I'm already made. Like this show had me in.
Yeah, I'm made too.
Episode 1, when like the opening sequence, like it's just. I was like just like hit over the head with this thick mood, and it's sort of kind of ethereal like music. It almost sounds like at times like the Cranberries went to church. Singing like
that's amazing.
Oh man, I just was so like I was like, please just drench me, and I just want to just dunk in a vat of what's going on here. And I'm blown away in chat that Yukinon says this is an Yashike show, because it strikes me as such a different kind of thing. I mean, not like I see it in terms of like the chillness and the time spent with the characters kind of doing everyday things, but to me I think there's enough going on where like if I wanted to kind of zone out and heal and take a break from things, like this is not the show I would watch. Yeah. I think the themes can be, depending on who you are and kind of where you are like philosophically, I mean these could be some pretty fucking depressing ideas that the show is throwing around.
Yeah, I mean, when we see like slice of life in the Yashike shows, like if the characters are ever going through winter, it's just regular winter, vanilla winter, if you want to call it, not nuclear winter, as it could well be. Holy shit! But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Anyway, so we're gonna go first into creators, which I believe, Doc, you have the scoop on that. We're gonna go over to our man in the field.
That's right. Here I am on the ground of the Anime News Network website. There are, insults flying thick and fast, Shadon. I'm having to hide. There are trolls about. You never know where one might come in. But that's why you got me, the intrepid reporter, on the field here doing what no one would do and submerging into the depths of the ANN. Encyclopedia. Luckily, the farther away you get from the forums, and towards the encyclopedia, the safer it is. So I think we're going to be okay here. Yes, breathe a sigh of relief, sports fans. Okay, Girls Last Tour, a 2017, I believe the fall of 2017 TV show. I'm trying to see, yes, so it is adapted from a manga. I don't have the manga information ready at hand, but that's okay, because we're just going to talk about the anime right now. In chat, other people might bring up the manga, or we may mention it later. So this show was directed by Takaharu Ozaki, and it's funny, like Ozaki's CV, I was looking at it. There's a ton of like director of photography credits or photography advisor for all kinds of different things, from like Steins Gate to is that Tenno Tenjei? Tenho Tenge, and Night Raid 1931, Occult Academy TV show, all these plethora of photography credits. The only other directorial credit that I see in terms of like being the series director so there's a movie trilogy called Wave Surfing Yappe. There's exclamation points, so I have to say it like that. And then there's a little TV show from a couple years ago, Shadon. It came out to great discourse. It's called Goblin Slayer.
Oh.
and this gentleman was the director.
That's what they do. It's part of their natural life cycle. God, the most tired fucking argument I've ever heard.
Man, we talked about that enough yesterday. We shouldn't go into that again. But yeah,
that's very Goblin Slayer and back where it belongs.
Man, yeah, but like he got a bunch of credits on that. But yeah, no, lots of photography. Beck, Mongolian Chop Squad, big wind up. I'm unsure what a director of photography would do. I guess maybe like if you are maybe like if you're for your settings, or maybe if you're using photo backgrounds, you would have someone take a bunch of pictures and they would draw from them or just use them as backgrounds.
But could certainly be a plan. I would do that.
Yeah, that would make sense. So, and then we have the head writer, Kazuyuki Furiyasu. And Furiyasu has got series composition credits on another show that we've gotten more than one request for, I think, for in the Patreon, and that is Bungo Stray Dogs, season 1, WAN, not the first season, but 1. And
season wide area network.
Exactly. Let's see, Dropkick on My Devil, Encouragement of Climb, multiple iterations of Is the Order a Rabbit? A lot of things that I don't watch, but some JoJo's writing credits as well. So the TV show, the first one, Diamond is Unbreakable, Golden Wind, Stardust Crusaders, both. He's written at least 5 scripts, sometimes 9 scripts on those TV shows. Came up with the scenarios for some of the episodes of the Kaiji TV show.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. That's good stuff. So,
son of boys, if I ever meet this person and choose to engage them in a game of chance, I probably shouldn't.
Exactly. They know what's up.
All these fingers
He's got the dirt. You don't want to. He's got the inside scoop. 10 scripts of the Claymore television show, which is a show I love a lot. But I know it's divisive because it has an anime original ending. And the ending is not good compared to where the manga goes, but I still fucking really like that TV show. 17 scripts for Monster. Again, I'm going to take this opportunity to recommend Monster. It's a great TV show. Long as fuck, but really good. And then like a lot of, like I've, some Magical Girl stuff. Oh, Shadon.
Oh, snap.
Shadon.
What? Doc, don't hold me in suspense. Tell me.
Furiyasu wrote all the scripts and was the head writer for Yatterman Night.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay, I will give him, like, up until that point I didn't recognize a lot of stuff. There was some nice stuff there. Like, no, now he has mad props for me because that was a man who knew exactly what to do with that material. Like, holy shit. I haven't thought about Yasman Night in a while. And I feel bad for that because the more I look back on that, the more I think, holy crap, that is a brave and risky thing they did with that show. And it paid off so well.
One day, I'll get off my ass and edit that show and release that podcast to the world.
I'd completely forgotten we hadn't even released it. But yeah,
Man.
Holy crap, what an amazing piece of work that was.
So good. Episode directors. So the first episode, as is custom, was directed by Ozaki, the series director. So we don't have to talk about him again. But episode 2 was directed by Hiroyuki Tsuchiya. And let's see. Let's take a gander at some episode direction credits. We got Death Note, 3 episodes there. The very popular. Have you seen Death Note, Shadon?
Nope.
Okay.
Well, like a Death Note.
Hey. That's interesting. That's one of those shows where, like, you know, I wouldn't be like, Shadon, drop everything. You must go see this because it's so good. But it's like, I don't know, it was kind of like a touchstone it's in fandom, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like fun, and can be really fun and good, but it's sort of, I don't know, it doesn't strike me as like super lasting. I know there are some really hardcore fans of it. I don't know if it's the kind of thing that you would love a lot, but like, it remains in the cultural memory for some reason, so it might be worth seeking out. And it is a fun ride, so go ahead.
I think I'll just have to take the L on this one, Doc, and leave it there.
Thank you for that. God. Episode direct credits in Monogatari second season. That's some good shit, man. Noain, To Your Other Self, pretty good. I did not see Ninja Scroll TV. That's on here. I did see the subpar samurai show Peacemaker, which I did not like at the time. It looks like this person was getting their start around the time of the Slayers TV show, because there's some production advancement credits for Slayers and Slayers Next. Some Steins Gate Zero episode direction credits. Yeah. An interesting CV. A unit director in the 12 Kingdoms TV. 12 Kingdoms. Good stuff. Script for episode number 3, Naoko Takeichi. And Takeichi-san, we have director for a net animation called Cooking with Valkyries, which I've never heard of before this.
That's a new one to me.
Yeah. Key animator in Agami Ga Kill, the good TV show. There's something that came out called the Animal Crossing movie, which
I
didn't even know existed. It's just a let's play.
Now, I was to say, now that I've heard that, I want to believe it's like some really dark and twisted version where Tom Nook is basically the equivalent of Biff from Back to the Future 2.
Yes.
He just rules everywhere with an iron fist. The place is a wasteland. Isabella's a resistance fighter.
I know.
I mean, I've seen her kill with the Doomslayer. She can hang with the tough ones,
That's
just
hilarious. She can. She's not out of place in hell. So why can I not say this word right now? Katana Gatari, which got some key animation there. Key animation on. I'll mention another show that I have some fondness for that I think a lot of people probably either forgot or don't really care about, and that's Jormungand, or maybe Jormungand. I believe that was the big snake in Norse mythology.
You'd be right.
Yeah. So this is a show about. It sort of reminds me a little bit of. Oh my God, why can I not think of the show with Rock and Revy? Black Lagoon. Reminds me of Black Lagoon a little bit. It's about a group of mercenaries working for this arms dealer who is, a little anime girl. And yet all these hardened killers, trust their lives to her and swear by her, because she's also a badass. Lots of Monogataris, Nisei, Neko, some key animation there. So work with Shaft,
Lemon,
yeah,
Blueberry,
exactly. So Pokemon stuff. So they've worked with ILM. Some ReZero experience here as episode director, unit director. I'm not seeing too many like scripts though, which is interesting because, of course. Oh wait, no, we're not talking about scripts. We are talking about episode direction. My bad. So
maybe he leaned over every now and again, just crossed out a word.
I'm an idiot. I am an idiet.
Correct that.
So. Episode number 4, directed by Kazuhiro Ozawa. And we've got key animation on the show that got brought up in chat the other week when everyone was talking about the Science Adventure series. Chaos Head, where the first 3 letters of head are capitalized, but the D is not. The D is small. The D is tiny. The D feels intimidated next to... What is it? You just said
it's the
Scottish. It's the Scottish pronunciation. Chaos Heed. Oh God, what else do we have here? Oh, The Devil's a Part-Timer was fun. Storyboarder and episode director there. Probably interface with the series director, because got a storyboard credit on Goblin Slayer. And The Heroic Legend of Arslan, both the TV series that was an adaptation of the Furukawa manga, and the OAV, which I have a lot of fondness for, which came out in the 90s. The last two parts of that, episode director there. So that was great stuff. People should go back and watch that. Those Arslan movies and OAVs are really good. More ReZero credits. Again, this is probably where people met other people, and the big network of recommendations. The web reveals itself. A key animator in Naruto Shippuden. That's got to go at the top of your CV. You're like, that's right, I animated Naruto, fools. Hire me. Orange storyboarding, in the show that we covered. Shiki, 8 storyboards there. That's a show that I need to get to watching. And that's pretty much it. That I see some Steins Gate stuff. There's some crossover there with directors. But yeah, that's it. That's gonna do it for creative. So an interesting set.
I will add one thing, by the way, that Yukinon has mentioned in our chat, which is very, very much worth bringing up. The ending, in particular for the show, was done by the mangaka at their own request. They actually did it.
Oh, that's cool. That song, there are a bazillion SoundCloud remixes of that ending song. Let me just tell you.
That does not surprise me. I mean, I also really like the ending, if only because there's some really good little moments in it, like the bonking one, which I have now included as my Discord avatar.
I see it. That's very good.
It's pretty great.
It's very good.
Okay. So we've got creatives out of the way. Now's probably a good time to talk about patron questions. But you might think to yourself, you know what? I really like those two charming, young to middle-aged gentlemen and their strapping good looks and their insightful commentary. That's not us, but you can still contribute to us financially anyway. Well, you can find us on patreon.com/Warui Deshou. Again, this is the Deshou the Third format. This is a $5 reward for our patrons. They get a week early, and they get to contribute by asking questions of the show as we cover it. So if you want to get involved on this to ask us questions about Girls Last Tour, and indeed the other shows we're covering, Horror Mio, Wonder Egg Priority, going over, pop in your bank account details, your PayPal, hey, if you want to, just toss Bitcoin my way, I'll take it, even though it's terrible. If you want, however you want to pay us.
It's a sound investment right now. It's only going up in price.
Do you mean the electricity consumption of the world or the price?
Both. That would be a both.
Yay! God, I feel like everyone who has Bitcoin should have it turned in and changed for Monopoly money.
You might as well make some money at the end of the world.
Have the waterworks. Don't you feel like a big fucking man now? Anyway,
it's about to go legitimate though. Did you? So apparently Tesla purchased $1.5 billion of it.
Can I point out how amazingly? Can I point out how amazingly? This is Elon Musk in general. He's a moron, even though I've heard people say that he's the smartest man on the planet, which is bollocks. It's categorically untrue. But I mean, a company that specializes in, making electric cars, which are supposedly environmentally friendly, and therefore is aiming to drive down carbon emissions, has now inflated the price of a cryptocurrency that is consuming more energy than a number of countries on this planet put together. Nice own goal there, douchebags. Or douchebag, rather, singular.
Oh, it's douchebags. Yeah, I get the feeling that there are a lot of other people making a lot of the big decisions over there, rather than, the tweet master himself.
Oh, don't even. He's a master of nothing.
The Dogecoin inflator.
King idiot. Anyway, moving away from that. So yeah, check on our Patreon. Feel free to drop us some money if you wish, and you can, get involved with the discussion as it goes along. Let's turn over to the questions, though.
Speaking of discussion, Damn, Yukinon just dropped the question of all questions in chat. Which of us is you, and which of us is Chi? Oh my god, I don't know.
I'm you. No, I'm you because I'm a big eater and a dog. And
I'm
you're
al-
also prone to the occasional fit of violence, whereas you're more on the level.
Are you a fan of firearms?
Yes. Fictional firearms, admittedly. but
Man, I
I like to sleep a lot.
sleep is good. I would get mad if someone burned my books
Yeah.
for fire. That would be just. I was ready. I was ready to throw you to the wolves at that point. But I feel like she is. I think I used to be a lot more analytical about life in general, like she is. But I don't know. I've kind of let a lot of that go in recent times. But probably, I mean, it's probably a fair answer there. If we
Yeah.
go by hair color,
Well, if we go by hair color, I'm the worm statue because I don't have any hair.
which is chi. We've established that's just those are just statues of chi. Okay.
Oh boy.
Patron
All right.
questions.
Patron questions. So the very first one comes from Yukinon. Do you think the worm ghost-like statues spread across the city carry any significance? Similarly, how do you feel when looking at them? Well, I'm actually going to answer the second part of Yukinon's question first, because funnily enough, one of our other patrons, Son of Rackham, has brought up an amazing point, referencing a book, or rather, an author, George Orwell. Now, George Orwell, of course, famous for 1984, a book that everyone claims to understand but has not really read.
Conservative
You people on the
touchstone.
internet- yeah. Looking at you, internet. I actually have read the book. I actually did essays on it for part of my college courses. But one of the things I remember in that is that they described the posters of the titular Big Brother in that world as having an effect where you felt like the eyes followed you as you moved. So, you'd like walk past it, be looking at you like from that angle, and maybe like, oh no, it's looking at me again. Holy crap! I'm always watching, and that's what the worms felt like. But that being said, although they're always watching, I don't sense any malice from them. Because of the way they're portrayed. They're like very cartoony in their own right, much as the girls are. But also, like there's a number of symbols attached to some of them, like a little leaf popping out, and also a
halo.
A halo. But the one that spooks me the most was the one that they just hit in the road, because why is that there? Like the other, like there was another one in the very opening episode which was just tangled up in rope, but that could have got there anyway. But this one's just literally in the middle of the road for no reason. I'm like, curious.
I wonder if so. This show seems like a very rewatchable for all these little world details. Like, I wonder if going back and watching that episode, which I think is episode 3, where that happens, maybe 4, but whatever it is, like if you can see a shot of that bridge before and it's not on there, you know what I mean? And then they hit it, like that'd be fucked up.
Well,
That'd be
I'll
awesome.
say that. I'll say this: if Girls' Last Tour was a video game, an open world adventure, would there be an achievement for photographing every statue?
There would, yes, absolutely. Getting the camera would be very important.
Worm sign. I don't know whatever you all call this achievement. Anyway, as for what their significance is, this ties into the wider big question, which is this actually the real world, or is this the afterlife? Or
is this
my
fantasy?
personal...
Easy come, easy go.
Is he...
Yeah. A little
Well
high,
played, well played.
little low. Yeah.
Oh god! Now I feel tempted now to put Bohemian Rhapsody in somewhere just for the fun of it, but I won't.
You should.
I won't. Anyway, so that leads on to the bigger question then. Where are we? I don't mean, as in like what is the name of the location? Like, are we talking reality, afterlife, whatever? And the funny thing is, the show like has a very understated way of doing storytelling, where it doesn't beat you over the head with anything, which I think is really to its credit. Like, this is a show in which there is no audience proxy. All the characters know what's going on, but they don't ever like feel the need to give like massive reams of like, hey, you remember when this particular thing happened in this particular year, and this is named a particular thing. Like, I'm going to get into that as a separate talking point later. But the reason I'm bringing all this up is because there's a lot of dialogue between Chi, you, and also another character, Kane. What was his name?
Kanazawa.
I've got my nose. Kanazawa, where they talk about like, this world, and like it seems very strange to like reference it as in that way, like this world. I mean, I don't refer to like where we you have as this world
when you leave your house. This world is strange.
I've stepped out into this world. Yeah, it makes it seem very alien. And I don't mean alien in the sense of like actual aliens, but more like as an environment that which we are completely and utterly unfamiliar with. My theory, my working hypothesis at the moment is this is not the afterlife, nor is it real life. It is, well, I suppose you could argue it is afterlife, but rather it is purgatory.
Sure.
The stage between reality and the afterlife. And the worms
must be
therefore
cleansed before one can enter like the heavenly gates or whatever.
Yep, and the worms therefore are the judges. I mean, we mentioned Valkyries before in one form or another.
Right.
they're basically the divine figures. Cooking Valkyries, yeah, of all things. They are the representations of the divine figures that are, gonna decide if Chi move on to the afterlife or not, or maybe if they're cast down into hell. Or maybe they're just representations of that one, Richard Scary character from The Apple, that little guy with the fucking hat. I don't know.
It's an incredible reference.
It just pops into my head out of nowhere. I'm like, I'm rolling with it.
Man.
But no, in all seriousness, I think that they are representations of the judges or arbiters, or whatever you want to call it, that decide who goes on to the next stage of the afterlife, and that they are indeed in the afterlife.
So I think that there's no wrong answers here, right? I kind of lean toward the real world, but I mean, getting a grip on, when this is, relatively speaking, or like even just the sense of time in general.
Well, actually, I have an answer for that, believe it or not. Which is when they get the camera has a date time in the bottom right.
Okay.
It's approximately year 3200, and not much has changed, but they don't live underwater.
Right.
Well, actually, a lot has changed because the world has fucking ended. But no, then again, though, one thing I should point out, and the Promise of Neverland has taught me this recently, along many other cruel and harsh lessons, which is we speculated, of course, like when and where is this, and 2040, and I was like, actually, no, that's not true, as the second season reveals.
Right.
Although then again, that could also be wrong. But it's up for debate.
Yeah, and I mean the tech is. I don't know, like there's like they say things like when they're climbing the tower, right? They find the elevator, and Kanazawa's like, well, they made this 100 years ago, but they made it because they couldn't figure out how to work the actual elevator that is in here. So I mean that day,
very off C clock,
right? So like. There's some kind of lost technology happening. I mean, even if that data
word ancient is tossed around at least once.
Yeah, they talk about a long time ago all the time. But like, even if I feel like the world. It's hard to say how advanced it got because, there's like tanks and a fucking regular ass looking camera. It's the year 3000, but it doesn't look particularly futuristic. I mean, certainly the architecture of the buildings and stuff looks very similar to today, but like the fact that there's this layered society, kind of layered continents or whatever on top of each other, a la Midgar. I mean, that's different, but like it's almost like we got to like a certain point in human history, and then there was some kind of extinction level event, and then we got to like another, and then the people that were left advanced a certain way, but there was then another extinction level event, and it's sort of two different levels of societal advancement. I don't know. This is totally speculative, and like this is only one fun part of the show. I think is like, kind of locate it in this way. But so I know you have a lot to say. Let me answer the question about the statues. Do I think they're significant? Yeah. Yeah, they're in there too much and too directly referenced not to be, I think, at this point. They remind me of a cheese puff variety that I had when I was a child. Cheetos there's not that consistency of shape. Cheetos are almost like a kind of a gnarled stick. Sometimes you'd have like a little, like some parts will be thick and then thin on the same puff. But these cheese puffs were like consistent, like a just totally.
Stop. My God, you've pieced it all together. There is a mention of cheese as both a flavor and, the ritual of taking pictures, and cheese is used to preserve the memories of the past, and therefore these cheese puff statues are the things that are the links to the past, present, and future. Yep. My God, we've cracked it! Holy shit!
And there's a character called...
Cheese puffs are the key!
There's a character called Cheeto, I mean...
They're going to beat Chester. Chester's going to be the architect. He's going to be sat there in front of like 4 dozen TV screens. He's like, hey, girls.
Me and Cool Spot were hanging out and exchanging sunglasses. It's
Oh man, I've thought about Cool Spot in years. How's he doing in retirement? Has he got off his drug addiction yet?
Hopefully he's set up, with his hot run he had
clean.
In the 80s.
He's clean spot now.
He's yeah.
Oh fuck.
They did seem pretty cartoonish. It was almost like the Bugs Bunny portraits of American Gothic, where the eyes would follow you across the room. Nothing quite as that explicit, but yeah, I mean, I am totally like I don't really have a good working theory of what they are. There's a really interesting one by you that they are sort of eternal arbiters and judges and sort of progress keepers for people kind of groping around through purgatory. I think why I want to think this is the real world is because, and this is a silly reason, because what I'm about to say could be just as true, I think, if it were purgatory. But I find a lot of the stuff in the show has kind of an allegorical bent to it. Just in terms of the girls wandering around through the wasteland almost represent, I think, human spiritual journey through kind of the dark wasteland called life that we roam through, right? Kind of mostly on our own. Maybe if we're lucky, we've got a soulmate or a partner to journey with us, and we're picking through the ruins of tradition and things great society has bequeathed humanity that have since fallen away. I think a lot of traditions that people have clung to for a long time have kind of been toppled and or lay in ruins over recent years, recent centuries. And so, yeah, a lot like you and Chi, we're just kind of going along, doing our best, and looking for nourishment and love amid the ruins of kind of a spiritual civilization. And I don't know, I find that whole sort of take on it really, I guess that's maybe where I see the Iyashike that Yukinon mentioned, because I do find that kind of reading of it a bit comforting. But I just think it's really interesting. And that could totally be the case if this were purgatory. But for whatever reason, that's just not the way I took it. But I think totally valid and highly probable reading of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is something else I think we should mention about this show, because I think this relates also to what we said about other shows in the past, which is sometimes there are shows that rely on their fictional environment as a means of what we call mystery box storytelling, like that J.J. was saying, where you constantly ask, what's the meaning of this thing? What's the meaning of this? Right. You've watched Star Trek Discovery, the stuff like the Red Angel stuff and all that crap, and then of course Lost, infamous J.J. Abrams thing, was what's the what's the bunker? What do the numbers mean and all
What
that?
did the numbers mean?
Yeah.
Although Lost is still
I-
good. I'll say it. Lost is good.
I feel like there's an obvious joke I could make here, but I'm not going to go there. I never actually did
I am
really
lost.
watch it in full. I read about the ending of it, and I was like, well, glad I dodged that bullet. But anyway, that's a different
These things
discussion.
don't depend on their endings, whether or not they're good, in my opinion.
Anyway. Well, I hope. Well, maybe you might eat those words by the end of this show. Oh, dear.
Well, I'll just say
I'm
decadent.
kidding,
I'll
I'm
just
kidding, I'm
gesture
kidding.
at decadence and say that was a good fucking show, despite the ending.
It was, to be fair. You are correct. But the thing is, like, when I talk about, like, the mystery box kind of show, where it relies mostly on the momentum of mystique and what does this mean, and fan speculation, like, as a communal discussion kind of thing.
Right.
Which streaming is inadvertently also ruined because there's no time to have the discussion where you can binge it. Thanks a bunch for that. It's like one of those things where you had a good thing going and you fucked it up. Although WandaVision has returned that by, being a weekly release, so good for them. But anyway, point being, I don't inherently dislike that kind of show. But I do, however, have a distaste for it where that's all the show has to offer. Because to me, like, I'm not necessarily here for, like, deeply ingrained fan speculation over minutia that is only there for the sake of it being for, speculation about minutia. And so when it comes to Girls' Last Tour, though, this, I think, does have a deeper philosophical meaning and also has a deeper meaning in terms of what it means for the characters, what it means for the theme of the show, the moral lesson it wants to impart on us. Because I do think there's by the merit of how the characters are designed, what they do, what they're currently trying to do, the world they live in, it is immediately tragic. So when it comes to you and I speculating on what this may be, I'm totally okay with, because in the event of either our answer being right, both of them still gel with what I think this show is going for and what it's trying to tell us as an audience, and the cautionary lesson it's trying to get out there, which I think is exemplified in the first episode, because I'll get into that later, but the scene between Chi and Yu over the rations, I think is probably one of the... I think it's an incredibly brilliant moment of storytelling that is nigh flawless in my opinion, but I'm going to get to that later. I have nothing but praise for that particular scene.
I have an issue. I have one issue with that scene, especially that hinges on where it's located in the series. But we can we'll talk about that when we get to it.
We'll fresh up.
Just to like respond to something you said, like about environmental storytelling. And in terms of, like, fan kind of theories, speculation, trying to fit things together and make sense out of the lore. Like, I think, this reminds me of video games in some ways. Like, Naughty Dog can do this thing pretty well when it wants to. From Software, excellent at this kind of thing with Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, are like, they just have like mastered this art of, like, rather than telling an overt kind of convoluted story, they will break it all apart and distribute it throughout the world as puzzle pieces. And then it's up to the player to find those, read those item descriptions, pay attention to the architecture, pay attention to what people say, and take all that stuff that they've kind of non-linearly found and put it all together in a coherent picture. And so I think that there's totally some of this going on in this show, and it's really fascinating.
Vesh out there, by the way, there's nothing. There's nothing anymore is an overused phrase. What I mean to say is there's something that I really don't like on YouTube, which is where I see like 7 things you didn't notice in like
the listicles.
But the thing is, like, more often than not, they usually, like, in the thumbnail have an arrow point to something that is incredibly obvious. I've even like seen things like, because I've recently been playing Final Fantasy X, the algorithm has picked up on that, and it's gone like, here's the origin story for Seymour, and I'm like, I don't care, because the game gave me all the info I needed. This is stuff that you can find out for yourself by paying basic attention to what's going on, So the reason I'm bringing it up as a problem is because like when shows are entirely about like spotting background details that don't really mean anything, it's just all basically it's like everyone's doing their own Wikipedia article on the episode as they go.
It's tougher when you have a show like that and it's more of a passive experience. Like, I think it makes a lot of sense to do this kind of thing in a game because it's so interactive and is like the players exploring and turning things over and touching everything. Whereas, if you're watching the show at a weird angle on the sofa or there's a glare on the TV and you miss it, like that's shitty.
Mm-hmm. Or you're playing your phone, you're watching
exactly.
Candy Crush.
Yes. Candy Crush. Man.
People still
around.
That, right?
I know. My family still plays this game. My young children play this game. Oh my God. Sometimes.
You got to crush that Candy Crush obsession. Okay.
They moved on to Fire Emblem Heroes mainly, but Candy Crush is still there.
Good. Okay. Next question comes from Gogo Site Robot. Why do you think the characters are drawn in a much simpler cartoony style to the world around them? Well, I've got a word for you, and I wish I could have this dropping into a video right now, like a little insert, where it looks like the Ben-Hur letters.
Okay.
These massive stone slabs, and that word is contrast. Because, make no mistake here, Chi and Yu are child soldiers. They are Hideo Kojima's favorite plot point, because he fucking loves those child soldiers. He really does. Ragging on Kojima aside, the fact that they are drawn this way, I think is only. Maybe I'm reading into this, but I think it's to serve as a stark contrast to what's going on around here, where they are two cutesy girls, admittedly in what might very well be, SS adjacent outfits, army.
At least they're just medics. Is what it looks like.
Well, anyway, but like they are still young girls, and make no mistake, I think the intent is very clear early on. They should not be in this situation in any way, shape, or form.
I don't think that they are child soldiers. I think they found that shit, or someone found it and gave it to them. Because war hasn't happened in a fucking forever. You know what I mean? Like one of them doesn't carry a weapon. They clearly found that sniper rifle amidst everything else that's there. They don't know about like planes and tanks. They were sort of talking about war as if it was this thing that happened a long time ago. You know what I mean? When they talked about like the rations and stuff, and they're like, why did humanity make all these weapons? They're stupid. If they'd only make food, we would have all been happy. We would have all survived and we wouldn't have those problems. And they're like, well, people back then had their own problems, like war. I think it was a specific line. Like war feels like this thing that is this ancient thing when there were people here, because there's no people here fighting. They've only talked about Grandpa and met Kanazawa. I mean, I think that that those jackets and stuff like that are just, they were drops they picked up.
Well, to be fair, Chi did have that dream though.
I know. What was that? Like what? That's a weird flashback. That's like feels like someone else's dream. It feels like knowledge she couldn't have.
Well, if it is, purgatories, I think that could be her former life. That's where I'm drawing this from.
Oh yeah, that could be. No, that's interesting, right? Flashbacks to the former life. Yeah.
Yeah. Because also I should note in that dream, which we'll call it that for now because we have no definitive proof it's a flashback. Kanazawa was there as well, or at least someone who looks a hell of a lot like him.
Oh my God.
I didn't notice very briefly.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. But I mean, like, you have to also then think, like, okay, if they are, just people who pick up, where do they learn all their skills from?
What skills?
Like, how do they learn how to shoot a gun, reload it?
Right.
How do they learn how to maintain the vehicle they use?
I think this is, like, part of the mystery of the show, because, like...
Yeah.
I don't know, because, like, when they come out of that cave at the very beginning of the show, I mean, I guess, like, you could think, well, they have just been exploring around here forever. But to me, that was almost like they were coming out of a womb, that they'd never been outside before. And
they did mention
it's so bright.
They did mention that they had actually come in there at some point. So the show, like their
Sure.
memory, like their previous experiences start before then. But the thing is, I don't dismiss your theory of hand because I think that either way, again, much as we said with purgatory versus real life, I still think the
memories can be like fragmented.
yeah, I still think that the point is nonetheless one of contrast, where whatever is happening, be it real world purgatory, actual child soldiers, not child soldiers, but still survivors, like trying to live out in this post-apocalyptic wasteland. However you want to stack the deck on this one, whatever card you want to deal out for this, the fact remains they shouldn't be going through this.
Oh
Period.
yeah, no doubt.
And that's why their designs are as cartoonish and they look very blobby as they do, because it serves as a sharp contrast to what's happening around them. You're like, it's all cutesy, but it's happening in the worst possible fucking place. You know,
Right.
Short of it being the Fury Road.
Well, I guess look, I think this place makes sense for me to talk about my issue I have with the rations and the gunpoint thing. So just to set the scene, again, they had been talking about war and what war is like, you know, and Chi is explaining like, well, maybe it's like this when there's only enough for two, when there's only enough for two people, but there are three that have a need, then you have a war situation, and then you have your own, you have that in microcosm because there's only a single ration bar left, chocolate snack ration bar, and both of them want it. And so Yu pulls her rifle on Chi, and there's tense music playing, and, you know, she's taken the bar. She's like, "Hey, it's mine."
She's holding it one-handed as well. I'm like, that's some upper arm strength there.
It's true. It's so true.
Can we have a dual wielding rifles at some point?
That'd be
We're
sick.
we're going full GoldenEye. Time split is 2 on this. Yeah.
And so like,
Anyway,
she's like, I'm gonna eat this, and I'm just taking it and I'm gonna do it, and then she does it. And then of course Chi, you know, bops her on the head, and they kind of turn it into a little bit of a play fight. You know, Chi's aggravated, but like the tension is, and the consequences are way, way, way lower than the stakes might kind of have you think that they're. My issue with this is because it happened so early in the show. I both had false expectations and also kind of didn't know what to expect. Like the blobbiness. Why I'm mentioning it now is because the moe blobness of the character designs kind of put me in this place where I was like, there's no tension here. Nothing's going to happen. She's not going to shoot her. She'll be fine. I don't really care. No one's going to die. I was like a balloon letting air out in terms of the tension of that scene. It was totally ineffective to me for that reason. And if it had taken place after, for instance, Kanazawa lost his map, and I thought, this is a show not afraid to deal out heavy blows and big consequences to characters, then I might have been a lot more tense and thought, oh my God, you could shoot her here. But where I was in the story at that point, you know, I was just like not buying it as a real life or death situation.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to come back to that later, but I don't disagree with you, but I also don't think that was actually the intent of the scene. But I will explain in reams and reams of detail later, as I meticulously pick apart.
That's interesting. Okay, cool. I want to hear about it, because to me, I read it as like they were discovering how to do a war. You know, they were like had been talking about it, and then here's war in microcosm. Like there's more resources than you know what to do with. More people than resources, which is funny because there actually aren't. There were a assload of rations in the truck.
Keep that in mind.
And that's like maybe that's like the meta commentary. Like there's all these wars, but fucking people are hoarding shit. You know. So anyway.
Oh man, you're spoiling my point.
Okay, sorry.
Well, no, don't apologize. You're entirely correct. But I'll get to that later. Right then. Next question. Girls Last Tour, this again comes from Going Website Robot, takes place in a post-apocalyptic after the end of the world scenario. These sorts of settings are popular throughout sci-fi media. Why do you think we are drawn to stories of society being destroyed? Okay, I think that there's a couple of reasons for this. The first of which is that I think that a post-apocalyptic scenario lends itself well to easy tension. And I don't mean easy as in like, a bad kind of tension. Like, it's lazy or anything, but, by merit of it being a post-apocalyptic society, you have limited resources, limited things to fall back on. You don't often have the things that we take for granted. And, it makes it very easy, like, to have scenes like where, okay, this person doesn't have like a weapon to fight back with, or even just we're running out of food. It makes it very easy, it makes a good foundation to write a story in which there is tension over the character's imminent survival. It's not a safe story by default, and escapism often is about going to scenarios which we ourselves will never want to be in, but can still absolutely, enjoy vicariously because of the excitement it provides. The other of which is often they can provide social commentary. Even things like George Romero's, was it Dawn of the Dead, I think it was, the one in the mall?
Yep.
I mean, you've got zombies wandering a mall. There's your commentary right there, Excessive consumerism, all that kind of thing. Where's the difference? That kind,
right.
That sort of stuff.
We're the monsters.
Yep. I've recently been playing Fallout New Vegas, which I have actually had a massive U-turn on. I know you and I have discussed the length before, where I felt like I wasn't all that into it, but I've changed my mind substantially on it. That has criticisms in it of capitalism, particularly like, ultra-capitalist business owners like Mr. House, of course, for example.
I always thought you liked it. I thought you liked it always.
I found the main story uncompelling. But I've changed on it a bit. But anyway, we'll discuss that. I'm actually going to bring up New Vegas later for a different reason, so I'll keep that in mind for later.
Okay.
But I think another reason as well is, like you've got the social commentary, you've got the difficult situations, and I think that also it just lends itself to scenarios that you wouldn't like realistically be able to write. Like zombies, for example, are the ultimate, apart from Nazis, are the ultimate guilt-free enemy to fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think also like one of the things they also do is they also like pluck away and expose the undercurrents of what, like, when people start falling apart.
Oh, this is what I was gonna say.
Yeah. Like when like if you have like, for example, 20 people in like a mall or something like that, you probably got like, the ultra fundamentalist Christian character. You've got, the gun nut. You've got like, maybe there's a God, how do I even say it? Like, there's, the businessman, there's like the nerd, like all these different people with different philosophies.
The jock, and
suddenly,
the nerd.
Yeah,
Mr.
He ain't shoving
Popular.
no zombies. He ain't shoving no zombies into lockers. Yeah, exactly. But like at that point, that's when philosophies truly get tested. Where do they fall apart? Who's right and who's wrong in all this? So yeah, I think there's a number of reasons.
Not even like who's right and wrong, but who can assert their will. Such that like to kind of make their will into what's right by the whole might makes right deal, right? Where it's and in some ways I guess it becomes true because once you're in a state of nature, right, a lawless land without society, like what is right except what's agreed upon to be right. In some ways, I mean, that's a whole other discussion, but yeah, I think just to echo what you say, like, I think that those scenarios provide a sort of a way for writers to strip away kind of societal conventions and safety and say, like, let's take a look at like the bare human nature and like what's going on here and what people believe. What can bring people together, what's possible, what is impossible, all those sorts of things.
Yeah. One other thing I'll add as well, because the baseline of, mood, shall we call it, positivity even in a post-apocalyptic scenario is usually pretty bad. Like everyone's miserable because, well, where's my next meal coming from? Oh God, the zombies are knocking on the door again.
Right.
That kind of thing. It also, by contrast, therefore, makes the positive moments you find in that all the stronger, which is something this show does,
Oh,
of
yeah.
course.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes those stick out all the more by the fact that they are contrasted. Again, this being a big part of it for me, so heavily with the melancholy nature. I wouldn't even call Girls Last Tour necessarily depressing, so much it is melancholy. That's the way I would describe it. But still, the contrast is there, and they stick out all the more rather than if they were just like, regular slice of life. Chi and you, going like fishing. Hey, we got a fish and it was nice. Like that'd be okay, nice slice of life thing. But when they're doing it in a post-apocalyptic
I know.
environment, where they don't know where their next meal's coming from, it's all the more like, oh, that's really neat. I'm really glad for them.
Yeah. This is a show that, like, man, it's. I think the way you take it, is so, like, there's such variance, depending on where you are in your life when you watch it, what kind of person you are, what mood you're in, how your life is going, what you believe. Versus like so many shows, it's like, okay, this is trying to make you laugh, and no matter what, like, that's how it's going to hit you. But yeah, this one, it just believes what it believes so strongly and presents such a striking vision in such a really arresting way. Like, it's got, and then it's like not forcing you to feel one way or another about it, but it's so strong that's like emotionally you sort of have to react to it in some way, you know what I mean? If you sit down and watch it, whereas like Yukon might feel like really kind of comforted by it, but like, I could see definitely a point in my life, my younger self, where I would just, it would really hit me hard, and I would feel like pretty upset, not mad, but just like kind of disturbed, and like sort of need to like go think about things and sort myself out for a while. So yeah, it's really strong show in this way.
I get the feeling if you as a person felt lost, quote unquote, like not literally lost, of course, but more like maybe you felt like you necessarily didn't have a sense where you're going in life right now, which is, I'd stress, not necessarily like anyone's fault or a bad thing. That happens to a lot of people. But I can imagine this show would resonate because, like, to make it clear, Chi and you have no overarching goal that's been presented thus far. They're not going to the safe house,
Right.
They're not going to some sort of sanctuary. They're not trying to find anyone.
So good.
It's moment
Such
by
a
moment.
good point. It's so worth bringing up.
And I think that's definitely in the show's favor. And I think also that might, again, tie into the idea of it being purgatory, because it's not any one specific thing they need to do. But I'm going to tie that to stuff I'm going to talk about later.
I think such a big point here to say is that, like, there's no destination given to them, but they can they can choose their own and fixate on it and make it important. In the way Kanazawa did, or in the way they did about getting up the tower and going up to a new level. There's nothing kind of, or no one telling them that's where they need to go and all your problems will be solved. But like, they decide that they're going to do it, and that's the direction they go in, and that's what becomes important to them and gives them sort of purpose and a goal. Just because they ascribe to that and they assign to that to their life, not because there's anything inherently valuable about what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And this is also why it's really good that there isn't any, like, for example, race of zombies, there aren't, any like infected people, that kind of thing.
No big
what
threat.
I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing pushing them on, like not trying to find shelter.
The threat is despair or starvation.
The threat is like it's been the elements or food, like. And even then, like, that has been something they have discussed, but it's never felt immediately pressing. It's a background element, but it is still not like, oh God, we are completely out. Time to start, like, gnawing on twigs or something.
Do you think this is a flaw in the show, or
no?
I don't either. But I could see someone being like, look, you know, a part of the reason I didn't feel any kind of threat during the gunshot scene, or maybe I won't feel threat in the future. It won't feel tension, is because the show is quiet, reflective mood piece, but it's not about sort of survival in the harsh world. Because, like, you know, when they find that filling station, like, they sort of say, oh yeah, it was good that we found this because we're running low on fuel, but there's no build up to like, oh my God, we're out of fuel. If we don't find a fuel station in 2 days, we are fucked. And then they find it. And they found the food in the very beginning. That could last them the whole show. Food may never be a worry for them again this entire show. And like, I could see someone being like, man, like, this is like what I wanted out of the show. Like this kind of like risk and tension. But I just think that maybe it would be worth meeting the show on its own terms, because it really doesn't really seem to be about that.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I said at the start, like, I made that joke about being really boring, but obviously it's not to me. But you have to approach it like we said before about the idea of when shows set out this kind of contracts or mandate. Here's what it's going to do. Here's what it's bringing to the table, and obviously, you know, again, the off thing I've said is I don't complain about a porno mag having porno in it because, you know, it sets out to do that. But I would, of course, complain if I was reading a history book that was not. That obviously was actually some history books would probably contain some erotic imagery. You know what I mean? Basically, you know, like, you know, I'm basically like, you know, there is a clear intent in the work, and you've got to understand that it's coming from that angle. And it is accomplishing that. And I think that its consistency in the lack of threat is also to its benefit, because oftentimes in those post-apocalyptic like stories we talks about, like it can just simply be a case of running out of food, you know, and then there is no like.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Oh, here's this episode where they have to get the medicine. You know?
Yeah. Like... But there is no zombie threat, or vice versa, where they're not showing food, but there is a constant threat, you know, of like the zombies or the, you know, like the whatever. And I think the fact that it's consistent that there's neither of those, and there is no pressing threat, but there is still like background elements of that where, okay, there is a scarcity problem, but it's not currently a pressing need. I think that works in the show's favor.
I agree.
It doesn't feel like, you know, it's only dabbling here and there. Because I feel it'd be like half committed in that case if it went, you're like, oh, we're really desperately short on food. Like, they get hungry, you know. And it's clear that, I mean, one of the things that I like about it, again, going back to the fact that they are young girls, is you, like, clearly just wants to enjoy good food. Like, you know, she gets really excited about the soup. Yeah. And in an ideal world, you know what? She'd probably be with her family having a proper meal, you know. If you want, like, I'm thinking of Fallout again, I'm just invoking in my head, like, that 1950s Americana age, everyone just having, like, a really good, wholesome American meal, you know, like, that kind of shit. That kind of thing, like, you know, dinner's ready, it's meatloaf, you know, that kind of thing. But obviously she's not. She's having a tin of soup that is being made on a, you know, stove burner, like a piece of camping gear. By her, you know, child soldier, maybe, you know, reluctant survivalist friend in the middle of what may or may not be a nuclear winter. You know, even if I portray this as pleasantly as I can do, it's still bad, and it's still not right, and it's still sad.
Yeah.
God. Yeah. But yeah, that's my explanation anyway, which is a lot of reasons. Escapism, commentary, all that sort of stuff. If you've ever like watched a more substantive like post-apocalyptic story, you know, I mean, also one thing I should mention actually that's just pops my head, because this is something that Near Awesome asked us as well, is that we have commentary about current state of affairs, like in our real world, by people who ostensibly have lived after its end. Like, you know, the hindsight 2020 thing trick being employed by a writer. Sure. Like, you know, you mentioned it, of course, where they say like, hey, why was war a thing? You know, like why they make so many guns and not focus on making food? And I'm like, you know what? Yes.
Yeah.
No, fucking really. Like, Jesus
thanks,
Christ,
Captain Obvious.
Yeah. I mean, I've read tweets like discussing, for example, the size of the U.S. military budget increases that happen year on year. Yeah. We could do so much with that money, but instead we're gonna put it into a missile. Like, literally, that's what I should do. I should take the money, aim for the US military, stick it in a missile, and fire into the sun. It's just a waste. And by the way, in the interest of balance, to not pick on the US too much, the UK, of course, has tried the nuclear, deterrent system, and it's still being maintained at like billions of pounds of expense when it could go to any number of other good causes. And I'm like, well, it's just because people, feel very pessimistic. But I'll discuss that's a discussion for another time. I don't want to get bogged down in the real world politics too much here. If I can, it's too depressing to think about. Anyway. Next question. This comes from Rackham Jr., son of Rackham. How old do you personally think the main characters are? I am going to put my money on 12 or 13. At most.
That sounds good to me. Honestly, I didn't really even think about it that much. It didn't... Yeah.
I would not... If there was one term I would not use to describe either of them, it would be I wouldn't call them teenagers, that's for sure. Like, whatever nebulous point you personally might think that someone changes from being a child to being a teenager, I would argue they are not there.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if the art style obscures this in some way, because, I don't know, maybe that's just the way they draw teenagers. But it would... Well, they look like kids.
Maybe in this world when you turn from a child to a teenager, you go through puberty, you lose your blobby face, and then you just get a regular face like Kanazawa does. That's how people grow up in this world.
A potato face.
Rackham also adds. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Doctor? That question?
Nope. No. You said it.
So Rackham also adds. For instance, do you think the GBS manner Mason and voiced is due to their age, or more of a creative decision by the writer, creator / illustrator of the story? Well, their age is in itself a creative decision, I would argue, for reasons I've mentioned, which is this should not be happening to them, whether it be real world, purgatory, afterlife, you name it. They are living a life that no child should have to go through.
Yeah.
Keys in the title, Girls' Last Tour. Why are there literally child soldiers? I mean, or even if they're not necessarily child soldiers, why are there child, survival experts, post-apocalyptic wanderers at all,
Grandpa, why did you send them into this world?
Yeah, it is a thing that should not be.
Yeah. I mean, they do not seem ill at ease in any way with the fact that it's a fucking wasteland out there. And
man, that's so depressing when you say it like that. Like, they do, of course, mention all the things that they hey, I really enjoy these chocolate flavored rations and all that.
What's
really
chocolate? Nice. Yeah.
They the little things moments of joy they get out of their interactions. They're great, but they don't seem to recognize that they there's that discrepancy between how we see it and they see it. They're just used to it. This is business as usual for them. And the more I'm thinking about that, just makes me feel grim. I'm like, oh no. Yeah. It's a cutesy show, but it's a cutesy show that coasts on top of what otherwise is a very depressing situation for them.
It is. Although, I mean, if it's purgatory, then that also would take out a lot of the risk factor. You know what I mean? Because it's a constructed environment, and I don't know. You think maybe that they're going to be okay, no matter what, or you think, I don't know, maybe if it's purgatory, maybe these are just the age of their souls, and they were grown-ass women when they died. And now they're having to grow up through... They have to grow up again. Their souls have to... It's part of the maturation process to become ready.
God.
No, I don't mean...
I really thought you were trying to do some sophist from Fire Emblem shit.
No.
I was secretly 700 years
That's
old.
That's right, yeah.
No,
get
the fuck out.
The Vampire Bun's last tour this is not
No. Well, the thing is, you say, there's no threat in purgatory because it's a constructed environment. I would disagree, because I think one of the key threats of purgatory is that you never leave it.
I know, right? I mean, that's how long will you be wandering around if you even realize you're?
Girls' Last Tour, 5,000th episode. They're still wandering. Just let it end.
I think one of a kind of common theme in purgatory is you sort of don't know that you're in purgatory. At least in the stories that I can recall that were about similar.
Sounds like when we watched Listeners. I didn't know I was in purgatory then, but I absolutely was.
Yeah. I was in
Oh
hell at the
boy.
end, though.
Oh man. But yeah, I think to answer Rackham's question, like that it is a deliberate design choice again for that sharp contrast. Um, do you have anything else to add to that, Doc?
Nope. I mean, yeah, that it could be um could be either one or both. I think I don't know, again, it's just not something I gave a lot of thought to, but could become something I think about more as the series goes on. I just don't think
Hmm.
it's particularly I mean, I guess it's relevant cuz like like you said, they're kids and going through hard shit, but I mean the way they're acting
Literal
and
or proverbial hell, you
yeah.
decide.
Well, and the way that they're so comfortable kind of makes me sort of forget about like the whole child pain bit of it
Mm,
because they're so kind of well adapted and well adjusted to everything that like it feels like the most pressing problems are those of like an existential nature. At least for me, those are the ones that I latched onto, and those are so universal and they sort of apply to people regardless of age. So I guess that's why I'm not really thinking about their age too much. But like, it could become, yeah. I mean, if they meet more people and then they're relating to other people of different ages, then it might become a thing that I think about more.
indeed. And that leads us on conveniently to our next question, which comes from
Okay.
Yukino. Based on how much you've seen thus far, do you think there are many other people like Yuri and Chiso traveling through the city, or are they, i.e., the girls, the very few left alive? Can I point out one small incidental detail that makes me very curious?
Yeah.
And this ties into another question we'll get to in a bit about environmental storytelling. But there is a distinct lack of any sign of human habitation prior to obviously Kanazara accepted, but like you'd expect for example, be like, cars,
There's no beds.
skeleton,
Yeah.
skeletons.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh huh.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to this with the next question, but I just find that really curious.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads me to think
Mm.
that if this is indeed purgatory as I theorize it might be,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I think that they are probably like the last people to go through it, or like the very like, and I think that might potentially have some interesting implications with what they like take with them in terms of remembering the world before they leave it behind. This again is rampant speculation.
Yes. Very reckless. Um, it's funny. I've always thought of purgatory as kind of an individual thing, like not like a bunch of people inhabiting this space that is labeled purgatory with
Hmm.
borders and boundaries. Like you're just
Interesting.
kind of going through your
Yes.
own stuff. But like, if it would be, I guess, sort of if we Occam's razor this, the simplest explanation would be that they're all, these three people now are all journeying through the same place that everyone has to experience. And so for whatever reason, it's just
Mm.
depopulated. Because I mean, to me,
Unless,
like the fact that there are so few people in there makes more sense if this is their purgatory and not like purgatory for everyone. Because people dying all the time. I mean, you're just telling me that there's no one else in purgatory? Like, I find that hard to believe.
yeah. Well, maybe in turn, because you know, like how I said
Unless
that
the world
Kanazawa
ended
appeared.
and they were the last people left on the earth or something. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh my god, the Moega girls, however you want to pronounce it.
Yes.
Anyway, you are quite right pointing out that purgatory could very well, depending on your interpretation, be a personal experience, which raises some amazing implications if it were true, where maybe like it might just be Chi or you alone, and the other one of them, and by extension Kanazar. In fact, probably I would say Chi in this case. Um, Sorry, I'm getting them mixed up again. I get their names mixed up so fucking easily.
That's okay.
Yeah, Chi. No, it was Chi. Sorry, yeah, it was Chi.
She's the
Where Chi,
raven-haired girl. Yeah.
yes, where Chi like has this flashback, or dream, and I'm again fairly confident that was Kanazar in there. So what if it turned out it was just her purgatory, and you and Kanazawa just flat out don't exist?
I mean, that'd be fucking wild. I would be
That
sad
would be
about that.
wild.
I would
That would be
hate
wild,
that.
but it'd be
I would
awful.
hate it.
I would hate it.
Yeah.
I would hate it in a way where I'd like praise the show for doing that, but I would still feel awful.
Yeah.
It's it's like every time we watch a goddamn show and it just ends with someone like being miserable and dying at the end. Oh my
Some
God.
fucking M. Night Shyamalan shit. That would be. I want Yuri to be real. Like Yuri has to be real, and Chito. They both have to be people that are real and really in each other's lives. Kanazawa matters less to me. If he's like some sort of angel or something that's just like there to teach them something or to guide them up a level, or test them, whatever. I'm good with that. But those two need to be really, really real.
I would agree. Right. Anything else to answer that question, Doc, or next up?
Remind me of the question. What was the question?
Based on how much you've seen thus far, do you think there are many other people like Yuri and Chito traveling through the city, or are they the girls, the very few left alive?
I'm going to say they're the very few left alive. Yep.
Fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. And the next one that comes up is again from Gogo Site Robot. Girls' Last Tour is often praised for its environmental storytelling. What do people mean when they say this? So
The trees
this
talk
is where
to
I
you,
get-
and they read you
Well-
bedtime novels as you fall asleep.
Yep. Well, I'm glad the trees read bedtime novels. They're very insulting to me. I don't like it. Call me a wanker every time. Wanker. Like, was that you, tree? I'll get you for this.
I heard something.
Oh man. So this is where I get to cash appropriately my Fallout New Vegas chip. Yeah, there's a good there's a good metaphor for you. So for those of you who haven't played Fallout New Vegas or any of the Fallout games, for that matter, to give you very, very brief summary, because we're not here to review Fallout in any of its forms. Fallout is basically what the title implies. It's the post-nuclear apocalypse, and people, like come back into the world, and it's all about like tribal struggles, people trying to survive out in a wasteland, that kind of thing. But one of the key things about Fallout as a fictional universe is that it has its own cultural markers from the prior to the apocalypse that survived and have since been reinterpreted or redesigned. New Vegas, for example, you could probably infer is set in Las Vegas, so the Strip is a big feature there. But all of the iconography of Vegas, or at least the fictional iconography in the world that has survived, is still around. Like there's references, for example, to all of the pre-war food, company logos, television sets, clothing, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of iconography and cultural symbolism there. So I want to ask you, Doc, then, let me pose the question to you.
Pose away.
Name any sort of cultural marker that you've seen thus far in Girls' Last Tour.
Things, there's tanks. Those are
something non. I'll make the question harder for you.
Okay.
Something non-military.
Well, I suppose the buildings the architecture rules out a number of cultures.
But they have no labels on them.
They
You don't
don't
know what the buildings are.
No, but I mean, this is not like, this is not a rural culture. This is not a tribal or island culture. It's not a primitive, underdeveloped kind of deal. There's technology. There's sort of steamworks, pipes.
Well, To refocus, what I mean is,
Okay.
when I say cultural markers, you don't see things like Coca-Cola. You don't see, like advertisements for specific products, anything like that.
I was just trying to make the Fallout mascot face. Sorry. Because I was in chat. I was told I looked like the Fallout mascot.
I'll do the finger gun. You've got to do the finger guns.
Oh, they do finger guns? Okay, my fault.
Yeah. I'll get you a bobblehead at some point. Okay. Fine. But yeah, you don't see things like, advertisements for anything like, say Coca-Cola. There's no McDenny.
Yeah.
There's no McDenny's.
Exactly,
The classic Japanese fast food staple, or at least anime fast food staple.
Pizza.
There is none of that. The only food that we see is what's in tins or what is military rations. Even the language is unfamiliar to us. And I think this is by design. Because one might argue, well, that's very lazy. Like, they couldn't have imagined like a McDenny's or whatever, which is not the point. Because I think that this speaks volumes to the kind of world that they live in. And this is true whether or not it's real or purgatory.
Very functional.
It's a very sterile, it's a very cold, and I don't mean because it's winter. I mean it's a very cold and sterile. And again, this is one of the times I would probably use the term Orwellian because like a lot of Orwell's architecture in 1984 was very utilitarian. Um, that this is not a world that had or placed a great emphasis on culture and even entertainment or intellectual anything. Basically, it was entirely function. The only things that are mentioned specifically are things like power plants, refueling stations. The only things that they find are ammunition and rations. Go on.
So, very smallest of counterpoints in that there are books, and there's a book specifically about a kappa that we all know the kappa, the Japanese yokai.
True.
So those are cultural artifacts, but they don't stumble upon any libraries. To your point, these are some things that they brought with them from wherever they came from. There's none of that they've encountered so far. And I guess maybe the camera, because that seems I guess that's sort of a functional thing, but that's also that's an art thing. That's a photography could be a hobby thing, just like books. Those are the only things that are not these purely, as you say, utilitarian, items. Everything from their clothes to just everything about the world, like you're saying, is just this purely functional, sterile environment.
Yeah, if ever there was a purpose for this society, as I understand it, from what little we know, apart from the religion of the worms, which
the religion, right?
Which may potentially be an afterthought. Who can say? We'll find out.
Yeah, that could be. As you mentioned Orwell and other dystopian story. Religion could be a tool of the state. Also, that could just be that. So. The
worms are always watching. Big worm.
That's right. Yes. Pray to your worm every morning and don't displease them. Yeah.
The 2-minute worm.
Anyway. Trimmers in this universe will be quite a thing.
Man. Man, oh man, oh man. But yeah, you ain't seeing any vibrating fridges that summon the worms. But anyway. This society to me seems very much geared basically towards a military purpose, and that's it. Because that's all we see that's been manufactured in bulk. Even the food that's been manufactured is a military purpose food. And yeah, there's nothing else. But the blandness of it, I think, also speaks to my purgatory theory, which is if it was a purgatory, then it wouldn't need to carry these things over. It would just be, a fairly sterile-looking city. It reminds me a little bit, actually, of the city that, who was it? DiCaprio, I think it was, in Inception. The lead actor.
He was the lead actor in that movie. Yes.
Yeah. So he and his girlfriend, wife, partner, I can't remember. It's been such a long time since. They, of course, retreat into the dream world and conjure up this city for them to live in. And one of the off complaints I heard about Inception, which I do agree with on some respects, is how boring and how unimaginative all of the dream world fights and cityscapes are. Which I do agree with. You don't see any crazy shit going on there, even though dreams can allow for that. But I will, however, make a concession in the case of that particular scenario where they spent so long in there and they came out wary of each other and aged, having age such, because they lacked the imagination to create anything truly vibrant. That was where the blandness of it was consistent, and it gave me that feeling here. But yeah, to go back to New Vegas. There are, there's no cultural elements. There's no for example, references to soda. I'm not even using soda particularly as anything a highbrow, but rather if you've ever seen, for example, Battlefield Earth, and God help you if you have, because that film is dog shit. But
thanks,
they
Elron.
make a fair point. Thanks, Elron Hubbard. Jesus Christ. While you were learning to spell your name, I remember that line. Thanks, that John Travolta.
The best. God.
Christ.
Terrible.
Terrible. Well, they had to replace the scenery every day in that film because it was chewed so much. Anyway. But like I will credit L. Ron Hubbard this one concession, which is if you were going through the post-apocalypse, you would of course see things like I think like there's that thing where they find like the golf course in the film, and there's like all the like dinosaurs and all
Right.
that. I'm talking like elements of like culture. Like I mean, if it was in post-apocalyptic
Sure.
America, there'd be Americana elements. You could like again in Fall, you go through diners, stuff
There's
like that.
no
There is no
evidence.
thing.
Yeah, there's no evidence of life.
Nope.
Beyond the prepackaged food, like,
Yeah.
and the books that they brought with them. Yeah, it's like, did people live here ever? Because if people, if there's a society, you're going to have those products of art and culture and entertainment, like you say. I mean, that's gonna crop up. I think. I mean, just
Yeah.
drawings on cave walls, for God's sake. So yeah, so it's weird that there's none of that. It's kind of
Yeah, where's
fascinating.
where's 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 the face with all the letters like now showing like and it's just like half of them are falling off. One thing I'll note as well about the architecture, a lot of the apartment buildings like they don't have consistent like layouts for balconies and stuff. They just seem to have like random slits in them. It's very very weird. It's like missing puzzle pieces from a Jenga tower, but they're all different. Um, Yeah, and the rest of it is just very utilitarian. Like there's pipes, like the underground section that they're caught in at the very beginning, before they emerge into the light. Like you got the
Mhm.
giant fan blade, you've got all the pipe work, all that sort of stuff. There is, and also very much no color.
No.
This is a, and again, like whether or not that's just to enhance the point that these are girls caught in an environment they should not be in any way, shape, or form, or if it's purgatory, or it just literally is the post-apocalypse, and it is a reflection on the culture that birthed this apocalypse in the first place, that it was only ever geared for war and nothing else, uh, you know, then all of it's valid. But yeah, I do absolutely agree with what Gogoro Sairoa said, which is the environmental storytelling is amazing in this show, partly because it is very much understated, partly because there is a lot of stuff that is told through absence rather than the presence of
Hmm.
things. Um, and it all is cohesive and serving a point, in my opinion.
Hmm. So she asked, what do people mean by environmental storytelling? Well, this is a thing that can happen in visual media only, in my opinion. I think when you read a book, you have a story that's told to you. You can't see background items like you're reading, like your mind's eyes being directed to everything that it needs to be directed to in the text of the book. Now there's subtext and things like that, but that's different. Environmental storytelling with visual media like games or TV movies, where it's not anything that the characters are saying or not actions they're performing, but the place that they inhabit. Things like art and architecture, like you were saying, the absence of things that we might expect to be there. In games, you go into a hotel room in The Last of Us, and the way the bed is made, the pictures on the nightstand, the scrap of paper there with someone has written like a little note to themselves, messages on the machine, or the way that the window's broken, or a piece of clothes left on the floor, a diary you felt like all these kind of things that are not text or narrative explained at you, that you could just happen upon, or that you like see in the background of film. Those are elements in the environment that contribute to the storytelling of the thing, of the world building. And that's what I think that they mean by that. And I think, again, that this show, I mean, all this speculation we're having, I think more than half of it has to do with not what they've said to each other, but like just these things that we're noticing about the world and the makeup of it, and just the environment. So that is what I think is meant by environmental storytelling.
Yeah, I agree. What I'll probably do after this podcast is over, because it's a Friday night and I can stay up as late as I like, hell yeah, is I'll probably pop on Fallout New Vegas and find a specific location, and just take a screenshot and pop it in our Girls Last Tour Discord channel,
You should.
just so you can see the contrast. Because I can guarantee you, like, there are a couple of places I can immediately think of from that game where, and this is again not to say that one is better than the other, but rather to point out this is a post-apocalypse where people are reinterpreting the culture of the old in new ways. If you've played New Vegas, you probably already have a good idea of what I'm referring to there, but I'm going to save that for later. Whereas Girls Last Tour, the absence of any such like cultural iconography is by design. And I think that's an amazing detail, and it really leaves me curious again for what comes next. But I think also, if it is just as literal as the real world that is in post-apocalypse, it's a very depressing point that there was nothing like it was never a world that they would have been able to live in even before it went to hell, because it was never meant for people like them.
Ugh. I think
Yeah.
that I think the Spartan nature of the temple is pretty interesting. Because when I think about the religions I'm most familiar with, like Western religions, particularly various sects of Christianity, like those places of worship, temples, if you will, tend to be very ornate, right? There was a movement to kind of get away from that, but by and large, like, you know, you stereotypically will have like stained glass, candles, incense, robes, color, all these kinds of, statues, like lots of statues, not a single worm, like all these things, like in houses of worship. And here you have like some like pipes, like molded into a shape, and like some fake flowers. And there's like a pond with glass. It's just so kind of different. And I'm not familiar enough with like kind of the makeup and layout of like Buddhist temples or things like that, Zen worship, and kind of what the objects are with that. I'm not nearly familiar enough to speak to any of that, but like, so maybe it's just this is just an Eastern religion reimagined. But I just found it so interesting how sparse and Spartan that it was. Like nothing on the walls at all, just that one statue with the pattern. That was so striking, I found.
Yep. Absolutely. Do you have anything else to add to that question, Doc, about the environmental storytelling?
Nope.
Great. Right then, that brings us to the end of our patron questions. So I want to thank everyone who's chipped in for those. Thank you so much. I always, by the way, just want to point out, I really like it when patrons like ask questions like those, because I really like it when people are as engaged with the material as we are.
Yeah.
And I feel like people are really getting into this show already. I know Yukinon's a big advocate for it, and I know that between him and Rackham in the chat, they have been absolutely having to restrain themselves like greyhounds of the races from going, well, actually, this is what's happened. This is what comes next. So thank you very much for that. Right, before we go on to talking points, of which I have just a little handful because we've covered a lot already, I'm going to nip for a quick drink.
Okay.
I'll only be a couple of seconds. If you want to take a quick break, feel free to do so as well, Doc.
Yes. We will
Great.
BRB.
We'll be back in a minute.
Hello, we are back. Thanks everybody for being patient with us. Shadon, are you familiar with Misia?
New.
I believe I'm pronouncing her name right. Misia, a very popular Japanese singer. Not like a teen idol or anything, but
Why
I
did
don't
she
know.
have her last tour recently?
No, I don't believe so. But I don't know, more like just someone with like a powerful voice, more like I guess like a Japanese Tina Turner or something like that. But she's singing this song called she's Into the Light is the song I'm thinking of. This show makes me think of that song Into the Light, and I think I would have played it for the standby music if not for the copyright hounds. But she also sings the first ending to Gundam Iron Blooded Orphans. That might clue some people in. I'm like, oh, that's who it is. But yeah, no, she's great. And I just wanted to say the show makes me think of that song, Into the Light. Anyway, back to where we were.
Good stuff. Well, that's all good. All right, so we're going to pick up where we left off and get on to talking points now. I'm going to get a quick joke out of the way that I had to write beforehand, which is I'm going to paraphrase Patton here and say, no boy, black girl ever won a war by dying for a country.
That's okay.
Yeah?
Yes. Okay.
Just saying,
It's true. It's a
right.
truth. Yes. I've made many sacrifices, but never that. Never the ultimate.
No. All right, so I'm going to start by talking about the very beginning, because the beginning is always a very good place to start. And I want to talk about how economical and efficient the character building is. Because make no mistake, you and Chi are distinct people. And I think the show does a really good job of showing that off. It'd be all too easy for them to be carbon copies of each other or to be too similar to really no. But we immediately get a distinction, through the fact, for example, both of them have their own dreams when they take, a sleep break, a siesta, whatever you want to call it, in the car or the tracked vehicle, whatever the fuck it's called. By the way, can I point out something that I found really, really telling about that vehicle? Mm-hmm. You get a shot at the very start of episode 4 where they're not in it, but it looks at the front seat. That seat is child-sized. That is a military vehicle built for children, which is just
it really does seem like a medic wagon, right? Like you would take that onto the field to pick up someone and carry them back. I'm not a sort of a mid to early 20th century World War expert, but that's just what I thought of.
Yeah. I mean, my knowledge of strategy and tactics starts and ends at what I learned in StarCraft. But if that was meant to be a medical vehicle, I would hope it would not be a tracked one that's really slow. But anyway, that's beside the point.
Well, if you need to reach, if your base is I don't know, at the bottom of a ravine, and you're having some battle on the hilltop, and you got to climb over rock and mud to get to your wounded, it might come in handy. But then why would you not have a full tank? I don't know. Not military history buffs.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain, though, that when Yukinos called it the Kessenkrad, by the way. So yeah, thank you for giving that. But yeah, the Kessenkrad is a child-sized car. Kanazawa ain't driving that. Because there's no fucking way he'd fit in the cockpit of it or the front seat of it. It's tiny. But anyway, no. The point I'm getting to here is they, of course, both take a break. They have a nap or a proper full night's sleep in the back of the Kessenkrad. Mm-hmm. And, of course, they both dream. What does you dream of? Food. Because that's one of her key character attributes, and that's not a bad thing. It's to the point where she actually starts, licking Chi's hand inexplicably. Glomping on it. But what does Chi dream of? Of course, the thing we discussed before, the war. Now, whether or not, again, that is a war that she has experienced firsthand, maybe she's read about it in the books that she carries, and that sits into her dreams.
Sure.
Maybe it actually did happen. Maybe they were child soldiers. However you want to interpret that, that's still what she dreamed of nonetheless. And this goes a great way in establishing the differences between the two, in terms of their mentality, and also how one of them is much more guarded than the other. But also it shows that Chi does actually have some vulnerability because she wakes up with tears in her eyes.
Yeah.
as much as she is like arguably the leader of the two, she's the one taking charge, the one who's practical, and pragmatic, task oriented, let's not fuck around. She still has that vulnerability in her that I think is only expressed really through that moment and a couple of other small bits here and there with her interactions with you. But I think it really goes a long way to establishing, first off, the tragedy of what they're going through, but also that she's a three-dimensional character and isn't completely like, brainwashed. Like, I mean, the crazy thing is, like, I recently watched a film called Jojo Rabbit by Taika Waititi.
Yes.
Jojo Rabbit is about a young boy who is inducted into the Hitler Youth and then, like, literally spends much of the film trying to rat out a Jewish fugitive living in his house under his mother's protection, by the way. They're not there by accident or just by coincidence. And he, of course, lives with, like, this caricature of Hitler played by YTC, an amazing performance, by the way, in his head, because that's how cult leaders work. Everyone has their own interpretation of what they say to them at that given moment. And eventually, of course, he, unindoctrinates himself, literally says, "Fuck off, Hitler," or something to that effect. A great line. a line I'm always happy to hear. But yeah, like, in comparison, like, it's clear that she, like, although she is certainly the more practical of the two and certainly the more invested in, like, survival, pragmatism, all that, military discipline, if you want to call it that as well, there is still an innocent side to her, as there should be, given her actual age and what we would like to be, her actual life scenario. And that moment of just brief vulnerability, I think, went a really long way in establishing her as a character in her own right, as well as contrasting her with you, who is very much more along the lines of, like, to her, it seems like she more plays war rather than actually believes in it.
Yeah. But, so, really briefly, and then you can get back to your. I was just going to say, so I've looked up the Kettenkrade. I don't know if that's exactly how you pronounce it, but so most of them saw service on the Eastern Front during World War II, where they were used to lay communication cables, pull heavy loads, and carry soldiers through deep Russian mud. So that sort of intuitive perception I had of them traversing shitty terrain to get to people or to bring them back, that was a good intuition on my part. I suppose.
Yeah, tracked vehicle.
Yeah. So later in the war, they were used as runway tugs for aircraft, apparently to save fuel. Like, the aircraft will be pulled onto the runway rather than driving there themselves. So interesting.
Nice. But on top of that, I mean, a lot of the dialogue is also very clear in their actions. Like, I mean, you obviously talks a lot about food. She is more practical. She's the one driving, like, so she's always taking the lead. Although she does defer to you for directions occasionally, like when they're like, okay, where is the wind coming from in this tunnel? How do we get out? That kind of thing.
It wouldn't surprise me if you didn't know how to drive, because she doesn't know how to read or write. And doesn't seem particularly interested in learning most skills. She's picked up sniper. It seems like she sort of, like, intermittently finds, like, little things to be passionate about, like sniping or photography, that just kind of appeal to her whims. Whereas, like you said, she kind of has all these, like, very practical survival and useful skills she's mastered, but she's also seems to be more into intellectual things, and also seems to be, like you said, feeling things more deeply in terms of, like, the sort of situation they're in.
Yeah. Also, worth noting, she is afraid of heights. And I'm going to throw this out here. Now, first off, I like that just in its own right, because it is a practical problem they have to overcome if they are to ascend to the higher levels. Indeed, that happens when they're on the elevator with Kanazawa. But I also like, if this actually is the afterlife or purgatory, and the ascendancy they must go through is in of itself, the means to escaping, and going on to heaven, whatever,
Space Nirvana.
Then this, Space Nirvana, this fear of heights could actually be the fact that she is more ingrained, like a tangential element of her being more ingrained in war, and the fact that she can't escape it. Now, again, probably complete rampant speculation, probably untrue.
It's really interesting.
But I like that. I really like that's an additional element of her character. And one thing I should really stress here is none of this is ever delivered through blunt like doesn't, for example, ever say to you like, you've always eaten all the food. Last time there's no like reams and reams of them talking about things that they've already done to get points across. We are shown that, we are not told it, you know. This is great, like character development done organically. I'm very, very impressed by it. It's very understated.
Yeah.
And I think also one thing I should mention about you as well is that she, of course, is the one who handles the rifle. She's the one, even though, and this again is also in contrast to Chi, like having her own vulnerability. As much as you is the more playful one, the one who would be constant, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" That kind of thing, you know, and otherwise goofing off. She's the one who probably is most ready to kill out of the two of them, and may very well have killed before if she's the one who's got the gun. You know, Chi, like, you know, herself is not actually the one who's armed. She's the one giving directions to you, like, don't lower your gun. No, now you can lower your gun, that kind of thing, which is terrifying when you think about it.
Sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, the characters get a lot of dimensions to them quickly and efficiently and organically, and I can't find really any fault with it thus far. I think it's been done exceptionally well.
How long has it been since you've seen Enter the Dragon?
I can remember it pretty well, even though it has indeed been quite a while.
Do you remember the scene near the beginning of the movie when Bruce Lee's character, also called Lee, is instructing his young student?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Are you talking about the scene in which he is told to go to the island and said, "You remember your sister? She was like..."
No. So this is when his dad is talking to him. There's a scene where he's being recruited by the British agent, but then one of Lee's students comes up and Lee is like, "Hang on, we have to pause our conversation. I have to train my student." And he goes through some training with him, and one of the things he says at the end about kind of not thinking but being more intuitive and feeling things out is it's like a finger pointing up at the moon. And then the kid looks down at Bruce Lee's finger, and Bruce says, "Don't look at the finger, or you'll miss all that heavenly glory up there." And I was reminded of this scene when it's a very warm day, and you and Chi are walking through some very shallow water. And
yes,
this scene right here like encapsulates the differences in their character, I think, so well. Like, Chi is looking down at like a book or a map, something like that. And
he's also wearing a helmet.
Yes, and you is looking up at the blue sky, and he's like, "Oh my God, look at this sky. It's amazing. You have to look at it." And then Chi is like, "Nope, look down, because you might cut yourself on something. There could have been these things that washed in from the pipe that are sharp." And like, this to me is like such a beautiful scene. And also, yeah, it just demonstrates how different they are, that one of them is so practical minded, analytical, a planner, preparer, and the other is more intuitive, kind of prone to like flights of fancy, getting carried away. Her appetites and instincts kind of rule the roost more so than her thinking deeply about things. Although she does ask some probing questions, but that's not. I don't think the show is saying that she's like dumb, or anything like that. I think she's just different, and she still thinks about things like, why do we live, right? And why is the sky blue? Like, she still wants to know things. It's just like she just seems to have a different approach to life and thinking and learning than she does. And, you know, speaking of Bruce Lee and his thought, I'm going to be like a shitty first year critical theory student. And because I talked about this yesterday, I'm going to talk about it again today, because ever since, you know, I've been reading John Little's book about Bruce Lee and the things that he thought, I've been sort of seeing yin and yang and the sort of Taoist thoughts of balance in so many things. And, you know, you and Chi seem to be so very different, but they really do balance each other out. The show, I don't think, is saying like, well, one is better than the other. I think they both need each other, and they both bring something important to each other and bring something out of each other that seems to like really help them. And they both, I think, are very, very important to each other. And
yes.
yeah,
I have evidence to that, which I'll talk about in a little while.
sure.
One thing I want to add, by the way, is you were talking about like you looking up at the blue sky and commenting on that, and she like looking down at the water. I want to know just a couple of things. One of which is the fact that she is wearing a helmet, to me, like, may very well be evidence that they believe there are other people around who might be enemies. Indeed, they think of Kanazara as one at first. And a thought that I had was, what if it turned out that was true, that Kanazawa was an enemy, but the apocalypse has erased the
Right.
traditional allegiances they had, which could be really neat. I don't know. That's again speculation.
Or their
but
memories.
Anyway,
Yeah.
memories. Yes. By the way, can we just talk about very quickly about how much of a boss Kanazawa is for like, okay, I need to get across this like ravine, this gorge. What am I going to do? I'm going to blow the fuck out of a building. I think it would have been really awkward for him, though, if he did place his charges wrong and it just went the opposite direction. Oh,
maybe
shit.
maybe he's had some practice.
Anyway, the thing I was going to mention
go
specifically
ahead.
was, obviously there was the blue sky scene, but there was another scene as well, I think, earlier on. I think it might have been episode 2 or possibly 1, when they come out of the underground, where they were shooting stars, and Chi as a profound reaction to that, at the beauty of that. So she's capable of feeling these things as well. It's worth noticing.
Yeah.
By the way, I'd like to also note that the streetlights element, there's like a scene where they see all like the illuminations. Like even in a city as sterile and cold and I'd say militaristic, maybe, like where it's just purely about function and not form. Like it's just something is just like even something like that still has its little things where you can just take a little bit of beauty out of it when read in a certain way.
100%. I think that plays into the sort of the allegory that I was kind of talking about earlier. The sort of reading this as the journey of the human soul or spirit kind of through a bit of a wasteland spiritually, and like well, if there is no destination, if we've been given no destination from on high to go to, and we can just go anywhere, and there's not a real kind of point, like it's terrible, but they, like you said, they still find the moments of beauty there. And I think that's like, in life too, like even if you don't think that there is some kind of a grand plan or design, like, and even if you think like there might not be like a point, as it were, for human life that's been assigned to us from something else, like living is still like, you still encounter beauty in life, even if a lot of it seems barren or, is not kind of nurturing to you in the way that you think it might. And they really bring this home after Kanazawa loses his map, which, like, can I just say, I think I threw up in my mouth when the map satchel fell from the elevator and he dropped it and just the pages were scattering. I was just like, holy fuck, I cannot believe the show did that. This man's life's work in an instant gone forever. And not because of a choice he made, but because of a random accident. And again, like, the world that they are in is cruel. It is uncaring. It is cold. It is not a nurturing place. And yet, the streetlights come on, and we can look at them, and we can say they're beautiful, and we can feel like refreshed by that, and we can feel hopeful, I think, from things like that. And all that was just so incredible to me in this show.
Yeah, I agree. Right, I'm done with that talking point anyway, so I'll pass the baton over to you.
Speaking of Kanazawa, I'll just want to really quickly point out that, like, I think his introduction into this story, the little details of it just added so much to the immersion for me. Like the way he interacted with them, the fact that like, so he comes up to them and he's like clearly trying to speak, but he can't because like this smoker guy hasn't talked to anyone in God knows how long. And so like the throat moves, but he just coughs and he's like, and then finally he's like, oh my God, it's me, Kanazawa. I haven't spoken to anybody for a while. You know what I mean? It's just like, yes. And then like, there's this fantastic part where like, Yu finally has let her guard down and like is offering him like, you know, pats the seat next to her in the back. It's like, come on, get aboard. And he just stands there for a minute and he's like, because he's trying to remember. It's like, we're supposed to do something when this situation happens. Oh, thank you. Arigato. Thank you very much. It's like, he hasn't had to say thank you to someone. Like the social graces and formalities and sort of politeness things about society have just been falling away for so long.
He hasn't made a Wilson for himself.
Exactly. So like, I was just like, Jesus, man, like it was really good attention to detail on the part of the writers. The thing I did think about him was like, dude, like this purgatory or the future or whatever it is must suck so bad if you're addicted to cigarettes. Because there's a finite supply of that shit, and like where, like he must just be like, you know, you find some every few thousand miles or business. You know, those will only last you so long, and there's probably only a few of them. You know what I mean?
Well, I have bad news. In that building that Kanazawa blew up was the only cigarette vending machine in the city.
Man,
I just want to imagine him seeing like it leading out, and all of the cigarette packets that might have survived are spilling into the gorge below, and he's like, no.
He'd be worse off than when his map fell.
Oh dear.
Can you imagine what a vending machine would look like in that world? It's just so fascinating because like it's like you were saying, there's no advertising. There's no like splashes of color and no brand names, no logos, but it would just be fucking brown labels with like soda, water, donut, like that. That will be it.
I don't even think they would be like, I don't even think they would be like that. I think they'd probably be like more scientifically blend, like hydrating fluid.
Yeah, right.
Carbohydrate,
high protein like snack. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Tobacco-based carcinogenic stick.
They seem like such a luxury, like in that society. You'd feel like, but no, the old men in charge couldn't get rid of those.
No, ain't no Marlboros around there. Hopefully, fuck those guys. They're dicks in Final Fantasy. Anyway, different thing entirely. No, I agree. Like, I really enjoyed the stuff. I really like as well in that scene how, they still like point the gun at him because they just don't. But like again, that speaks to like one of the themes which I'll get into a bit, which is like how easy it is to fall into conflict with your fellow man. Like we were talking, of course, about the scene with the rations, and I'm going to bring that up as my next talking point. But that plays into it as well, like suspicion, distrust. And again, we don't know even what the name of the army they belong to is or anything like it's stylized after German, World War II stuff, which is again I think an intentional aesthetic to make you think like this is what like this is a real world analog we can draw on a little bit, which I'm okay with. Normally I would be like a bit disdainful of when a story relies heavily on drawing on real world knowledge as a substitute for its own world building, but it's merely an aesthetic similarity and that's it, and it's never drawn too much attention to. But anyway, we don't know, for example, like they don't know if he's like an enemy or a friend. We don't know that. As I say, it could very well be that he was pre-apocalypse, but again, the apocalypse tends to redraw the boundaries and allegiances whether you like to or not. So that's you holding the gun out, keep it it's pretty good. I quite like it.
Do you remember when we were talking about Suritama with Emily Rand, and she said that one of director Nakamura's big themes in Suritama less so, but definitely in Gatchaman crowds, was that there are forms of communication other than violence, and that those are the ones that humanity should practice and try to lean on. And so like, it's interesting that like here, that seems to be the default mode of communication when a strange being enters. Whenever the other appears on your horizon, you act in a violent manner because you're distrustful.
I agree. And I think it's an understandable baseline for them to work from, given this is the post-apocalypse in one form or another. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't make it the right one, of course. Like, but at least I can understand why. How do you know they're a friend or not? Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the ration scene. The one that you mentioned, you felt like had questions about because of the fact that it just
really that it was too early in the scene for me to feel like there were real stakes to this.
Yeah,
too early in the series, not too early in the scene. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't think the intent was to have tension that they might actually shoot the U might actually shoot Chi, but rather I think that it illustrates a couple of different things. I think there's a lot of like little details that I really appreciate. The first of which is chocolate flavored ration. Why am I bringing up the fact that it's chocolate flavored? Well, again, it goes to show like that pleasure is only afforded like in a military context, because like chocolate is not something that we of course consume as a staple food, no matter how much I try to convince people otherwise. Yeah, I know. But like, I think to myself like, hey, what would like girls like they like chocolate, why wouldn't they? That's what some other kids like. But the only context that like you gets to enjoy anything that is remotely chocolate flavored is a ration that has been handed out. A ration incidentally looks like a edible Lego brick, but anyway,
it does.
It kind of does. So that's one thing I thought. I was like, even something that is meant to be pleasurable is only in the service of a military context in this world. So that gels with that element quite well. But also, they noted, of course, like, about the fact that, hey, if there's enough food for two people, but there are three people, they'll fight over it. But we have an inversion here because you, of course, noted, quite rightly, that there are 5 ration bars when they're distributing here. So the sensible thing to do, if you were being equitable, would be to give 2 bars out each and split the other one down the middle. Mm-hmm. So what we have here is not a case of a shortage, but rather an oversupply. And you indeed rightly also pointed out that they had more rations to go, so they weren't obviously short. I mean, if you wanted to, 2 ration packs of 5, 10, 5 apiece, done. The mathematics is simple on this. But what I really appreciate about this is the message it puts out there that we, of course, as you already said this, and it's worth repeating, we have the capacity to feed everyone, but we choose not to. Mm-hmm. It would be so easy to wipe out world hunger. In fact, Jeff Bezos can do it himself, basically, with his accumulated fortune if he felt so inclined. But he won't, because Jeff Bezos is a knobhead. He was on record saying, I don't know what to spend my money on. And I'm like, you are such a cunt. I'll go with a nuclear word there. You are a cunt, Jeff. Like, I don't know what to spend my money. Fuck you. Anyway, but point being, like, we, of course, do have the capacity to feed everyone, but we choose not to for a variety of reasons. And so in this case, like, this microcosm of what happens with Chi and Yu is a reflection of that even though the world has ended, the base desire, like, for competition, for coveting resources, even when it's not necessary, still exists. And it can happen like that over nothing. It's just one ration pack. For crying out loud, they're not even desperately starving as well. I know. Like we said before, like that lack of desperation.
Already had her fair share.
Yeah, but they're not. That actually also again proves that greed can happen at any time. And like Chi also says, like, I should have had my weapon with me. Like try again reestablish a baseline here of inherent distrust, with each other, which shouldn't be the case. And that's why, as much as you say, like, there was no tension here, I agree. I don't necessarily disagree with your criticism, because I think it would be better if it could do that, as I think it's primarily trying to do, which is act as a microcosm of the very situation that led to the end of the world as we know it, and they don't feel fine. But that's why I felt that scene was amazing, because it was very efficient. It had a lot to say about little details about, like, again, here's what the militarized nature of the world. There's nothing inherently fun for these girls. It's not delivered in a military context. It's caused them to turn on each other at the drop of a hat. The one criticism I would echo that you said, though, was that they do go into a play fight afterwards. I feel like, much in the same way as we said in the given
Right.
movie discussion, that I wouldn't have minded if a play fight had followed later if it hadn't happened just immediately afterwards, in much the same way that Haruki's, like, scene after the... oh god, I can't believe bringing it up. That scene, it's like, where he's just like, where he just looks frazzled. I'm like, no, that's too soon. But other than that, I felt very impressed by that scene, like, serving as a great reminder of, like, here's how we got to this situation, and it's competition over, oversupply, of surplus, which is grim and depressing, but is true to our real life.
I know. I mean, if it were less true, and if this were in another show where it wasn't surrounded by such kind of understated characterization and subtler environmental storytelling, I might say this is a little bit ham-handed of a scene.
Yeah.
Just to be like, war, the humans were stupid. They did a war over resources. What? Resources? Give me your resources. Like, what I mean? It sort of feels like a little bit like, but because of the context that it's in, I'm willing to give it more of a pass. And I think, I mean, I agree with everything that you're saying about it and the things it's trying to convey. And I think it does so pretty well. I mean, it's a little on the nose again, but I think it's an important thing, I guess, to be on the nose about.
Yes.
And there's not just but because they have all those rations in the back of the van, or what is it? Kerdwaffen,
Essenkrad.
Kettenkrader, because they have everything in the back there, you could argue, now this is like probably not a great argument, but you could say that Chi also bears some of the blame for this, for, getting her back up, as it were, about the unfairness. Like, oh, you're getting more than your fair share. I don't like this. I'm mad, instead of just like de-escalating, because, there's plenty. Like, don't freak out about it. Now, you certainly, I think, bears more of the brunt here because of her gluttonous, as Yuki9 puts in chat, gluttonous nature, being the instigator, starting this whole thing. And, I mean, you certainly can see why you wouldn't want to just let her trample all over you and set a bad precedent. So, yeah, I mean, it sucks, right? That, like, we just have this... I think why you bothers me really much on a couple of occasions. I don't think I love her character. I love a lot of things about it. I don't think it's like a one-note character or anything like that. But when I get most frustrated with her in this scene and then in the book burning scene, I think the reason why is because probably deep down I'm like, yeah, I'd probably do the same shit. If I was freezing cold, I would probably burn a book. No, I don't care if it's like someone's, fucking heirloom. Or I was hungry, I would take the third bar of the 5. They had 2. They're not going to starve. And it makes me like really fucking annoyed at myself and at you.
Well, I mean, I agree with you, though, at some level. Like, if it was freezing cold and all we had was this Kappa book, I'd say, Twitch is dead! Long live the flame!
Link the fire, baby.
Yeah, maybe that's what the book is about. It's not about the mythological Japanese creature. It's just about the Twitch emote. The history of Kappa on Twitch chat.
Amazing. Now, there's a cultural artifact for you.
There's a cult. Yeah, you better fucking believe it, mate. Oh boy. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Really, I think that scene works, but I say for the immediate aftermath of it. But I do think all the little details really gel together, and it is a great microcosm. Fantastic stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think this might be my final point, because we've got to cover a lot of stuff already. I have a bunch of notes, but this may be a bit corny. I've already been probably pretty corny in this show already, but I'm going to be corny some more.
Fine.
and talk about a scene that really, really struck me, but on its face, it seems like kind of a nothing scene. And that is in the aftermath of the scene we just talked about, when they have they've done their fight, they've kind of grappled and rolled around and smacked each other, and they're laying down in the snow, laying in the cold, and they're panting because they're out of breath because they just fought. Now, here they are, surrounded by some of the only signs of life we see in the show, which is a battlefield. Like, here's proof that humans were here because there was war. I mean, you could say that about buildings and stuff like that, but like, I don't know, they seem like uninhabited in some ways, but you don't really have tanks hanging out on the battlefield without war happening, I think. And so, but there's nothing. There's no anyone, totally quiet, cold. The snow is falling. The world is this big void of nourishment, void of helping you. You're alone, you two girls, in this place, and they're panting and they're breathing these clouds into the air. That's their breath, kind of interacting with the air, creating these puffs of smoke, and those puffs, those clouds of breath it's like the only sign of life over the whole field. Mm-hmm. And I think you could interpret it, you could say that like them kind of breathing like this into the otherwise silent air is almost like this protest, almost like a declaration of we're still here, we exist, there's life in this place that otherwise seems totally devoid of life. And so because of that, we can hope that tomorrow will be better, and we can keep making that declaration again and again and again as we pant into the air.
Yeah.
And like that, just the sheer beauty of that scene and the way I read it, like, it's kind of overwhelming. Like, it was really, really awesome. And
yeah, I agree. It like the fact that they still, I mean, I said before, like, their familiarity and their indifference to their wider situation, that they don't let it really get them down as such, isn't itself like a tragic thing, but it also can be seen in a positive light, where, you know, okay, they are surviving, you know, they might not necessarily have an end goal in mind right now, but they're getting from place to place. They are finding the positive moments here and there, and yeah, it almost feels like a protest against, you know, the harshness of the world. Like, fuck you, you know, two middle fingers.
Yeah, we just had a fight. Like, that's like a sign of life. Like, you know, flesh on bone. Like, people are here. You know, it's, I don't know, it just really moves me. It really gets me that, like, I mean, this is like, if you zoom far enough out, this is sort of like what we're doing on Earth in this fucking vast universe of nothing. I mean, beautiful nothing, but nothing in terms of like, seemingly nothing in terms of other life that we know of, or like a sort of God being that's doing anything. We're rolling around in the snow and fighting in this universe, you know?
The problem is he just won't answer my voicemail, dickhead. Anyway.
Because you said you could eat him. You said at the top of the show he's edible.
Hey God, how do you taste? Anyway. I have one final point I'm going to make here, and I'm going to talk about a scene in the temple.
Oh, I have another point too. God damn it, about the temple. Go ahead.
Okay. So, in the temple, it goes dark, and because the lantern goes out after Chi reads the inscriptions on the wall, and Yu is lost in the darkness, and then they trip over each other. They talk in the darkness, and you know, they say like they're looking out for each other. It's a genuinely nice, heartwarming moment, and then the lights come blaring on. The whole place is illuminated through the wind chimes, whatever you want to call it. And they can see like this garden in front of them, the frozen garden, like the frozen pond with the lilies on it. And I can make an argument that this is a more evidence of it being purgatory because they're clearly some outside force has recognized, that when they are divided from each other, that they are at their darkest. But when they're together and actively caring about each other, there is light in the world. Um, but even if it is not purgatory and it is just literally like a coincidence and it is just, real life and it just happens to illuminate at the right time, I still think it's a very powerful moment to show like, that they really do need each other.
Yeah.
And the key like the key thing to take away is even in like a dreary, rubbish, awful situation as what we see in this show, there's still the positivity and the brilliance of human connection that is capable, even in you know the most awful of conditions, like a literal post-apocalypse where it's not even like there's anything we can look at and read. There's no stimulation in the environment. There's no like, I mean, as much as like I wouldn't say advertisement is anything conducive to thinking or anything like that. Like it's not like they have much to look at and talk about.
Yeah.
But rather, I mean, saying that it goes to show human connection is still a powerful force that can literally light a way up. It's a really touching moment.
It's so good.
Whether or not it has any actual spiritual relevance or meaning, as written in the text, never mind why I interpret it, is something we'll find out. But I still think it's great.
Yeah, I think that scene is like sort of meant to convey that like they are to each other the way that Kanazawa's map is to him. Because he was like, seemed to be, for you at least, the first time when Kanazawa was talking about this, it was like the first time you thought about something that was like, this is a thing that gives my life meaning, and if I didn't have it in my life would feel empty. And she was this sort of like a foreign concept to her. Like, how do you feel that way? Like, that's odd. Like, I don't even feel that way about food. You know what I mean? And but I think when she was briefly cut off from Chi in the dark, and she started to think about maybe even death, like what would it be like to be without her? Oh my God,
is this the afterlife?
This would be terrible.
Is this the afterlife? She asks. Again, more maybe on the nose reference that it is some sort of like spiritual realm of some description, but we will find out. Stay tuned, loyal viewers.
We will find out, and I think this is like again, this is like to me anyway. This is the show saying like, you can decide for yourself what is of value in your life, and there's not, when I say there's no inherent value in it, there is, but it's because I'm saying there's no pre-assigned like value in it. It wasn't valuable before you were born and you showed up and got there. Like it becomes valuable because you imbue it with that value, and that's the way that the map was to Kanazawa, and that's the way that you and is to Chi, and Chi is to you. Like, and they just mean that much to each other. And that connection, like, is so much their everything. And man, like another thing that the temple got me to thinking about was like, for all of its Spartan nature, it was pretty cool. The light display and the statue and the little fake plants. There was beauty in it. It wasn't like ornate or anything like that, but it was still beautiful in its own way. But like, there's been no one there to look at it, to like take in that beauty and appreciate it for God knows how long, right? And I mean, that just makes me think like that. What is art and what is beauty if there's no human beings there to experience it? Like, it's like the Matrix question, like, is there a real external world? Or is it all perception or whatever? I almost think like, I mean, who cares? Like, if it's not being perceived and there's no one around, no human experiencers, it almost doesn't fucking matter if there's an external world.
Yeah. Like, it's a variation on the, it's a variation on the old, half joke, half true philosophy of if a tree falls in the woods.
Totally.
It's there to be appreciated.
Yes. The Bishop Barclay problem, yeah.
Meaning cannot exist without, someone being there to derive that meaning to begin with.
Exactly, and I think
There
that's
needs to be
totally
an observer.
and that's totally of a piece, like this experiencing the beauty of the thing, of the temple, depending on people being there to experience it. I think aligns up nicely with this whole other big point about, you know, there's not really anything inherent in terms of like the meaning of life or the destination of life without people being there to assign those things themselves.
Yes, this actually gels also with something that I was considering not bringing up as a talking point because I hadn't really fleshed out my thoughts on it, but you've given me an amazing framework to rate this point on, which is the show, of course, has already placed a great deal of emphasis on like documenting the world, the camera, the maps, the journal that she writes. Like this,
Yeah.
even if this is literally a post-apocalyptic world, if this is the real world, documenting it does have great importance, both in terms of just pure practical value. Here's where all our resources are, but also documenting in terms of like the experiences they've gone through going through this world. It serves as a message for future generations, you know. And if it is purgatory, where you know what happens next to them is determined by their as a judge of their character, it's a deeply insightful way of getting across the audience, like Chi's like own thoughts and feelings on it. So yeah, I 100% agree, and I think it's really good that the show like goes to lengths to show like that they are documenting what they're doing, even if there's not any explicit goal in mind. They're just doing it more for the fun of it. And of course, there's also like just nice moments when they take the photograph together, for example.
That was so sweet. Oh my god.
Yeah.
God, the
Um,
the taking the picture when her mouth is doing the zoo instead of the
Yeah.
chi.
But I mean, if I mean, just to put it in perspective, though, again, this photograph they've taken, like it looks fun, but we have to be reminded what we are looking at is a photograph here of two young girls, in who either again are child soldiers or are, you know, wearing the garb of child soldiers. And I think is a key thing to point out, by the way. Like, even if they had found that gear, that is still child's uniform. You know, it's not like the
still
sleeves are
fits
too
him.
long.
Yeah.
Still fits them. And of course, the Kettencrad is child sized because, of course, there's a nice little detail with Kanazawa. When he's sounding, he has to hunch his legs up because it's too small for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that.
It is a child sized Kettencrad. You know, maybe it was made for boys and therefore it's called the Ketten Lad. I don't know. But anyway, anyway. But no, like again, like that photograph, like if they were to show that to people later, like it may be like a normal society if it exists anywhere, they should rightly be horrified by it in some sense and be like, whoa, what, how did you end up in this situation? What are you wearing? This is a helmet for soldiers. Why are you wearing that? Like, and then of course
be
maybe
wild.
like people, and then maybe the long term lesson is let us like this picture shows a great moment of intimacy, of like emotional intimacy between two characters, of friendliness, but it also shows like, you know, the circumstance and the context that gave rise to it that should never be allowed to happen again. Not because we don't want that moment to come around again, but because it should be allowed to blossom in a different environment entirely.
Totally. Very excellent point. So here's my point about the temple scene and about kind of the discourse in there on religion, brief as it is so far. So they have a lot of thoughts about philosophy and metaphysics and stuff, but they're talking about like sort of kind of practicing religion, like the act of religion, and like whether it's tied to anything that's empirically true. And like, you know, you is very much like down on it. It seems like, oh man, like what a disappointment. Like it's not real. Like why did they even make it if it's not real, right? And like I thought this was gonna go, and originally where I thought it did go, but the more I thought about it, I don't think it goes here. I thought it was gonna do the Sigmund Freud sort of Karl Marx like religion. It's for stupid people. Like it's the primitive societies invented it, and it's a thing to it's a pacifier, and that's all it is. And once you become an enlightened society, you fucking shove it off because who cares? And I think that is just just deeply an arrogant argument and gives short shrift to like people of history that were like just incredibly smart and thoughtful and intelligent, still believing, and not just, some of it was cultural, of course, but like I think that there were truly devout people and always have been, and probably always will be, for reasons that are rationally sound to them and philosophically coherent, and not just gibberish or childish kind of longing for something more. And again, I thought that they were going to say that about religion, but like I think actually Chi's answer is a little bit more than that. When she says that like what this society may have been thinking is like going alone into the dark seems very scary. And
yeah.
What they wanted was to think about the possibility, of the world of existence where you didn't have to do that. And I think while that may seem not that dissimilar from religion as a pacifier, I think that is actually it is a little bit more of a charitable answer to religious people. It is a little bit more thoughtful. And again, it's a little bit more like, it seemed like, I don't know how to exactly put it, but like, that this is a way of explaining the world that it wasn't just to calm their fears, but it made sense of the world to them in a way that like was satisfying intellectually and emotionally.
I think what's also worth knowing here is we don't know what the purpose of this religion was prior to the apocalypse, or maybe even after. Maybe it was like created in the time after it happened, but then was abandoned. But it has meaning for them, a positive meaning for Chi and Yu, regardless.
It does.
What they make of it is what's ultimately important in the end, not what its original intent was. By the way, something that's just completely popped into my head out of nowhere is the worms. Okay, like I know saying that randomly is
I know
daft,
it's good.
Like,
No.
but is it meant to be like a metaphor for like erupting from the earth? Because they are ascending after all.
They are.
Is that what the symbolism here is about? It's like anyway, that's a minor thing. I don't want to get too dragged into the speculation because I'm sure we'll find out soon. Anyway, I am done on talking points, Doc. Are you done as well, or do you have more?
No, I think I'm done.
All right. Yeah. Well, now is the time in which we rate this bunch of episodes. So, Doc,
well,
you first. How would you rate episodes 1 through 4 of Girls' Last Tour?
So I think this will shed some light on how I rate things, because despite the fact that that my experience of a certain scene that you loved was less than ideal, and I was like, okay, I have these issues with it. I'm giving this the full 5 steaming hot pipe baths out of 5. Like, I want more shows like this. I mean, this just feels special. It feels thoughtful. It feels aesthetically so different than what I'm used to with current anime. And it's telling this story that, like, on multiple levels is just so fascinating. There's so much to sink your teeth into that I think and it's worth sinking your teeth into. Sometimes we sink our teeth into things that aren't worth spending time with, but we need to talk about them.
Don't we?
Because we do this podcast on them. But like, boy, I think this is a show that just merits like talking about, and thinking about. So yeah, it is a thing that I am already very much in love with.
Fair play. I am not going to give the show the full 5. I know this is the point where Yukidon cancels his Patreon subscription. He's like, "Fuck you!" But I am going to give it. I'm going to give Girls' Last Tour episodes 1 through 4. God, that's a rhyme. I didn't even know it. Bloody hell. I am going to give it 4.75 Lego-shaped Rasher bars.
Stingy bastard. What is the corner star? You justify yourself.
Just some of the minor tonal stuff, like I mean, the end, like the immediate aftermath of the ration scene, for example. I think sometimes it doesn't allow the negative mood to settle a bit, like before coming back round again. But other than that, I don't really have any like. This show has a very specific goal in mind, or rather, a set of goals, and it accomplishes them well. And the thing is, I spoke before about the idea of like, when we talk about mystery box shows and how I don't usually care for them because they feel like you're doing your own Wikipedia page kind of thing, where you're only really interested in just the actual acts of cataloging lore. And there's nothing, I don't find that interesting. I don't find that stimulating. That to me feels like a memory test. Like, oh, did you remember when that was a thing? And I'm like, no.
What did H. Bomber guy call it? The Wikipedia method of storytelling, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Quite possibly. And there is certainly a lot of like interpretation discussion to be had about this show's meaning. But this is one of those times where I'm okay with it because it's, for one, I think its open nature for interpretation is intentional. For two, it's backed up by actual substance and ideas. Like, well, I mean, war is hell is an obvious message. Like, I don't think you and I need to really go into that in great detail and go discuss, is war hell? Yes. Moving on.
Send out a survey to the patrons.
Does war change or not? Well, that's a question depending on what video game you play. But anyway, that's
man. If we were still doing Twitter polls, like those would have to be Twitter polls.
Yeah.
Is war hell? Y or N? Yes. Has war changed? Y or N?
I mean, Solid Snake says in Metal Gear Solid 4 the war has changed, but Ron Perlman in all the Fallout games says it has not. Who is right and who is wrong? Please submit your essays.
Discourse.
Next week. Oh
Debate.
My god. Yeah, we could discuss War as Hell not all day really because it's obvious. But what this show does is
Gundam's been discussing it for 40 years. Sorry, I just had to get that in there. Sorry.
Oh my god. But what this show does is, yes, it gets that message across, but it gets it through for its aftermath and what it ultimately costs us by having these characters who, in any other scenario like that we want to see, would not be here. The environmental storytelling, the Spartan nature, the clinical nature, everything is not a fault. It is a feature, not a bug, and I think it works really, really well. And I am keenly interested in what comes next. I think this is pretty much overall great, and it accomplishes mostly what it sets out to do. Yeah, impressive start for the show.
Very impressive. Like, man, 2017. Whew, what a year for anime. Mm-hmm. That was a big one. The more I see stuff from it that was big and people really liked it, I'm just like, damn.
Damn, son.
Damn.
Okay. Right then. That's going to bring us to the end of the podcast. So, thank you very much to everyone who's listening to this, be it a Patreon or if you're listening to this on the free. Thank you very much for taking your time to watch us or listen to us talk about Girls Last Tour. If you have enjoyed this podcast and want to support us financially, you can do so by going on to patreon.com/Warui Deshou. If you want to contribute to our discussion of Girls Last Tour as we go along, the $5 tier is waiting for you. Get yourself signed up to that. Gets you a load of other perks and benefits as well. Definitely do check those out. If you want to support us in other ways apart from financially, that's totally fine too. I understand, times are tough. I'd rather you spend your money where it's needed, rather than it being necessarily frivolous. We're getting by. I mean, me and Dog, this isn't our job. This is our passion. So we're good on that. But nonetheless, if you want to support us otherwise, you can do so by just dropping us a like or subscribe on wherever you find this podcast, Apple Music, Spotify, so on and so forth. You can follow us on YouTube, of course. That would be great. On our Twitch as well. Twitch.tv/Warui Deshou. Warui Deshou, everything basically. It's everywhere. It's on
just
all
Google
the things. It. Indeed. And I want to give a quick shout out also to our patrons for contributing some amazing questions, for being advocates for this show. I'm very glad we finally got around to covering it, and I'm very, very honoured and pleased to be covering it soon as well. So to wrap up then, Doc, where can people find you on the World Wide Web?
At The Subtle Doctor. No caps, no spaces, no underscores.
No punctuation.
I'm too edgy for punctuation. I don't need it.
My name is Direct.
Just all the words shoved together, close up, touching each other.
My name is bold without actually having thicker letters.
Exactly.
Italics, fuck you.
Don't need them.
Anyway. Okay.
CSS is for babies.
You can find me at Shadon1010 on Twitter. Talk to me about anything and everything. I promise I will try and respond in a way that is probably not heavily sarcastic and caustic, but whatever. It's my right. Sod you. Anyway, yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Stay safe, look after yourselves, take care, look after your loved ones. We will be back next week at the time of airing to cover One Derek Priority again. We'll be back for Girls Last Tour in 3 weeks' time from today.
How am I gonna keep from watching the rest of it? I want to continue to speculate about where I think it's going, but I guess next week we're gonna, or 3 weeks from now, we'll do 5, 6, and 7.
And 8.
Are we doing this in 4s, or are we stretching it out?
4. We might as well do it in 4s, I'd say.
Okay.
Because if we did it in 3s now, we'd have a weird number thing going where it'd
Is
be
it 12
4,
episodes
3.
or 13?
I think so. I think it's 12.
Okay, yeah, then we were fucked. Okay, so if it was, we could stretch it out if it was 13, but yeah. Anyway, I don't know how I'm gonna be able to stop after episode 8. Honestly, it's just so fucking good.
Yeah. Legit impressed. So, on that note, I'm going to bid you all farewell. Have a very good weekend, everyone. Take care, stay safe, and as we often say on this podcast, embrace each other, everyone. It's the end of the universe. Good night.
Good night.